Let us pray. Almighty God, where you have called us to govern this province, we ask for your help to make decisions and laws that will be just and will promote the interests of the people. Almagtige God, ons bid dat u gedurende ons vergaderings ons die nodige wysheid sal gee en ons motiewe suiwer sal hou en dat u ons sal help om ons tekortkominge te oorkom en al ons besluite aan u op te dra. Sikilele ilezwe letu nabantu balo, umusile ikulundu pitpondu letu. Nkosi sikilele i Afrika, Kina abantwana bayo, kokele inkokele zayo, inike ikolo i Afrika. All this we beg in your holy name. Amen. Please be seated. Order, I see the Chief Whip.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. That notwithstanding Rule 198, precedence be given for the subject for discussion. Thank you.
Any objections to precedence be given? No objection. Agreed to. The House will then first start with the subject for discussion in the name of the Honourable Member Schaefer. I see the Honourable Schaefer.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, the most extensive findings available on land reform and restitution in South Africa are to be found in the report of the high-level panel chaired by former President Motlanthe, and I quote, "Experts advise that the need to pay compensation has not been the most serious constraint on land reform in South Africa to date. Other constraints include increasing evidence of corruption by officials, the diversion of land reform budget to elites, a lack of political will and lack of training and capacity have proved more serious stumbling blocks to land reform." Mere months after the panel's findings, the populists at the ANC Nasrec conference unanimously passed a resolution on expropriation of land without compensation. The question must be asked, why did the ANC push for expropriation of land without compensation when the high-level report's findings clearly state that land reform failures have nothing to do with compensation and everything to do with the ANC's own corruption and lack of political will at national government? Speaker, the reality is that at the time of the tabling of this report, the budget for land reform was at an all-time low, less than 0.4% of the national budget, with less than 0.1% set aside for land redistribution. The reality is that by 2014, the ANC had spent a combined 69 billion on land reform and redistribution, with only a dismal 9% success rate to show for it. 69 billion could have bought 58% of South Africa's productive agricultural land at market value.
Order.
But this money has gone down the drain, along with any hope black South Africans have of getting their land back from the ANC. This is what the ANC has done with our land. The party was desperate for a populist deflection tactic. Since 1994, the ANC has had every chance but failed to build the capable state by giving land ownership through redistribution and restitution. These continuous failures to effectively redistribute and reform South Africa's skewed land ownership drove the party's voter bases to the EFF, threatening the ANC's success at the polls. The adoption of land expropriation without compensation is clearly an elaborate cover-up of a track record of failure, corruption, and diversion of land reform to ANC elites over the past 15 years. Speaker, expropriation of land without compensation is a repackaged land promise the ANC should have kept decades ago. The DA believes that land ownership through redistribution...
Order, member, 1 second. Honourable Janki.
I just want to check if she can take a question from Rodney Lentet that has given to me. Rodney Lentet, you remember him?
Member, you're not prepared to take a question? You may proceed.
The DA believes that land ownership through redistribution, restitution and land reform can be done by a government that prioritizes and adequately budgets for this crucial service to our people in post-apartheid South Africa. Land expropriation without compensation is not necessary when you have a competent and capable state. We firmly believe in the equitable access to land through title deeds and ownership in line of Section 25 of the Constitution.
Order.
South Africa's people must own the land they seek, not hand it over to the state.
Order, member, just 1 second. Honourable Davids and Honourable Janki, you're both on the speakers list. So please await your turn and allow the member the silence to speak. Honourable
The DA and
Second.
provincial government may not have the constitutional mandate to change the national policy that withholds title from black farmers, but we take our crucial provincial mandate of supporting emerging farmers very seriously, unlike any other provincial governments. This is why the Western Cape remains the only province in South Africa to provide dedicated support to emerging black farmers and land beneficiaries. The ANC wants to lease land to South Africans in a never-ending cycle of dependency on the state. Similarly, the EFF wants the state to be the sole custodian of land. Under the ANC and the EFF land policies, black South Africans will never own land, will never amass generational wealth, and will never have any form of fixed assets to leave to their children. The ANC and the EFF both seek to threaten black South Africans in the same way the apartheid government did, as serfs of the state at the mercy of ownership only afforded to a select few. Clearly, Speaker, land ownership has now moved from private hands to state hands while black South Africans remain empty-handed. But the ANC, Speaker, cannot even finalise its own position on expropriation with compensation without the party being left seemingly split between those in favour of the motion and those not. President Ramaphosa himself stated in an interview in London this week that land expropriation, and I quote, has not quite worked as we had intended it to work. Why is this, we ask? Perhaps President Ramaphosa should consult a high-level report before adopting a rash land policy. And to get closer to the truth, Honourable Speaker, let's review the cold hard facts on the ANC's record on land reform. The flagship 1995 and 1994 RDP policy first set a target of 30% transfer of all commercial agricultural land by 1999. This goal was later deferred to 2014, then to 2025. Perhaps the ANC's opposition here can tell us what is next, 2050? Many citizens have lodged land claims alleging historical injustices, but the ANC government does not even employ enough staff to process these claims. Will the ANC opposition explain this clear-cut incompetence to us today? Under current national policy, the state buys land and leases it to black farmers, with no option for a title deed up until after 50 years. Perhaps the ANC opposition will explain how on earth this lease-only policy for black farmers will ever redress apartheid injustices. Maybe they will also explain to us today why corruption is so pervasive in land reform. We hope they will tell us why elites secure farms only to run them into the ground. Tell us about the Gupta dairy farm. Tell us about the 97 million rand farm given to a Lutuli House employee without any due process.
1 second. Just before I see you, Chief Whip, I want to address the Honourable Davids. I've already asked you to please contain yourself. You're giving a running commentary here, and you're on the list very soon. Just wait your turn. Honourable Chief Whip.
So, Deputy Speaker, I would want to underline the point that you've raised, please, and ask that you enforce the rules of the House. Thank you.
Member, you may continue.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, the ANC's dismal track record speaks for itself. Rural and urban land reform is one of the ANC's biggest governance failures to date. The facts show that the DA is the only party that truly advances equitable access to land through title deeds and ownership in line with Section 25 of the Constitution, while ensuring adequate compensation and growing a healthy and thriving economy. All it takes is sound and effective governance and a clear, decisive political will to correct the injustices in our country's past. Speaker, South Africa does not need land expropriation without compensation. South Africa needs land expropriation without the ANC. I thank you.
Order. The Honourable Magaga.
Go. Nasela. Speaker, I think we must acknowledge that the history of South African struggle is the history against colonialism that subjected indigenous black African people, who are the majority, into slaves and landless in their own country. Millions of black lives were lost in the struggle led by Pambata, by Nele, by Makana,
Just
by
one second.
Langa
Member,
Dube.
just 1 second. Honourable Chief Whip.
Is the honourable member prepared to take a question to explain what he means by black?
Order. Member Mkaka, you prepared to take a question? Answer,
Later on.
answer is no.
You can
Yes?
get me on the passage. Josiah Gumede, Oliver Tambo, Joe Slovo, Lillian Goy, Chris Hani, Nelson Mandela, etc.
Order,
in order to return.
Order. Member, just 1 second. Honourable Joseph.
Deputy Speaker, the person opposite me, the honourable member opposite me, makes such a lot of noise that I can't hear what is being said in the House. Please, man.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. Honourable Fritz, I couldn't see you, but I suspected he's referring to you. Please contain yourself. Minister, member, you may continue.
Puppet behavior. Nelson Mandela, etc., in order to return African dignity through African ownership and accessibility to land. They all understand that colonialism is a crime against humanity. Mandela and many of his comrades spent almost 30 years in prison in order to reclaim our land from white colonialists represented by both the National Party and the so-called Democratic Party, which until today remain representatives of white supremacists and interest. Hence, we can't be surprised when the DA, which is a combination of National Party and DP, are vehemently opposing the resolution of the ANC to confiscate the land without compensation for the benefit of the poor black majority. They are continuing with their colonialist agenda to continue marginalization and alienation of the indigenous black majority to the benefit of the rich white minority.
Order.
Those thugs. Speaker, since the Conference of Berlin 1884, where the DA historical predecessors mapped out and institutionalized the colonization of African continent, the quest to regain land has been in the hearts and minds of the majority of our country. In South Africa, the establishment of the Union of South Africa in 1910 and the subsequent passing of the Native Land Act of 1913 further entrenched the historic injustice after Berlin, which, Honorable Schaefer, you are a great beneficiary. Native Land Act, promulgated in 1913, dispossessed the African people of their land and allocated only 7%, Honorable Schaefer. You know, only 7% of the landscape of South Africa to African people. It was to be the first piece of legislation and followed by many other apartheid laws that would lay the foundation of racial segregation in this country. In their pivotal opposition to expropriation of land without compensation, it seems as if the DA suffers from serious selective amnesia as far as our colonial legacy is concerned. This amnesia is fully in line with their equal opportunity liberal posture, which denies the continued impact which the legacy of apartheid has on the lives of the majority of this country, including myself, but not Schaefer, Honorable Schaefer. DA of P.W. Botha and Helen Suzman think they can blackmail the ANC and destroy its leadership to this country by deliberately misleading society that the ANC is responsible for land grab that is currently taking place in the province particularly. They don't tell the people that in actual fact, 72% of the land in this province is in white hands, and the black majority can't continue squatting in their own country while white minority lives comfortable lives at our expense and wish to give our land back when they wish. This part of apartheid and colonialism is failing to identify land and allocate temporarily people temporarily while they are still waiting for their houses to be built, despite claiming to have done audit in this province long time ago. Since 1994 democratic breakthrough, the ANC-led government has been very sensitive and careful in executing its policy, at times at the expense of its own people's interest. It provided an opportunity to white South Africans who owned this land that was stolen from black majority to take their time and avail land for distribution. How dare you think that will buy the land you have stolen? You know, the willing buyer, willing seller policy adopted by the ANC government to create mutual cooperation among...
Order, member, just 1 second. Honourable Chief Whip.
Is the Honourable Leader of the Opposition saying that those honourable title holders in this House are thieves?
Order. He may respond to that. I read it differently, but can I ask the order? May I ask the member? You did not refer to a member in this House. Is that correct? Thank you. You may continue. You may continue. Please continue.
The willing buyer, willing seller policy adopted by the African National Congress government to create mutual cooperation among dispossessed and beneficiaries of this colonialism could not improve accessibility of black majority to the land. It is in that context that the ANC Nasrec conference resolved to fast-track the program of land redistribution through expropriation of land without compensation. The ANC president, who happened to be the country's president, explained seriously conditions that should be considered carefully in the process of executing that particular program. He assured the nation that whatever the government do to implement the policy, but it will do it within the confines of the rule of law, and it will not affect the food production. Instead, it should increase food production in our country. It is only a person with no interest of black majority, like our Honorable Sheffer. You know, it is people like them, including that of this country, who would reject the statement presented by Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa. The ANC as a liberation movement wished to extend its gratitude to revolutionary people's movements that have been consistent in putting the land question on the agenda of transformation of South Africa from minority to the majority rule. From the landless people's movement to abahlali basemjondolo, from the miners at Marikana to farm workers in the Western Cape, extraordinary citizens have been working their community to ensure that the quest for land remains paramount. Because there's no liberation, there's no freedom without the ownership of land. In fact, if you are against the expropriation of land without compensation, you are anti-freedom, you are anti-democracy. You want to enjoy freedom alone, you are a very selfish person. The ANC had heard the cries of our people. Speaker, if we all believe that money stolen from the state-owned enterprise by the Gupta's family, who happened to be a friend of our previous president, and the premier, including the premier of this province, Helen Zille, should be returned back to the rightful owners of our people, then why now is a fuss for the stolen land returned back to its rightful owners, who are the black majority? Why you would like Gupta?
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I don't know if you heard the words of that song, but if I think about a landless person in South Africa, that person would think about the ANC and think about Michael Jackson, and you know those words, they don't really care about us. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker,
order.
I can assure you throughout this speech and the rest of the debate, you think about the ANC and you think about the people out there, the ANC don't really care about us. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, let's put this whole debate into context. I think, first of all, this debate is in the context of a country that is looking for investment. It's in the context of a country that has junk status, of SOEs that don't work, SAA with constant bailouts just short of bankruptcy, Praso and Metro Rail, specifically now the people of this country feel it because it's not working. They don't care about us. From load shedding potential coming now with Eskom, failures in the coal supply space, water affairs and the bankruptcy of water affairs when we're sitting here with a 1 in 400 year drought. This context that we find ourselves in when we have got dams like Clan William and Bruntvlei that are put on hold that could equal thousands of hectares of land reform potential, when we couldn't even find 1% growth last year, when poverty in our country is growing, when visas can't be attained, and our president sits overseas and puts a formidable team together, a pride of lions, Trevor Manuel, Msebisi Jonas, Jaco Marie, and Phumzile Langeni. This is a formidable pride of lions to go out there and hunt this 1.2 billion rands worth of investment that we are looking for so desperately in this country. But the problem with this debate is this debate was like sending those pride of lions to the dentist before they had to go out and hunt. Their teeth have been pulled out. It was giving them the Mugabe handbook to say, now go and look for some investment. That's what this debate does. But Mr. Speaker, this is not only an agricultural debate, and of course I stand here as part of agriculture. This is a debate about assets in our country. This is a debate about home ownership, of which my colleague, Minister Madikizela, is going to address. But I'll just put one point on the table. If you look at the document produced by the economist, Mr. Schussler, and he shows that already in our country, first-time homeowners, 56% are black and 33% are white. If we release RDP homes right now with title deeds like we're doing in this province, we put another 2 billion rand worth of assets on the balance sheet of the people of this province. But
Order, members. Minister Windy. Order. Honourable Davids, Magaka. Honourable Magaka, please. Minister Windy, you may continue.
Thank you very much. Mr. Deputy Speaker, let's get to the agricultural component of this debate. How serious are the ANC about land reform? Really, how serious are they? I believe they are not serious one iota because they actually don't care about us. If we have a look at the budget aligned to land reform in this country, specifically after the committee under the Deputy President then that the Honourable Schaefer referred to, let's have a look at what budget is available. Of the national budget, land reform gets 0.4%, and of that, less than 0.1% is allocated to actual land reform. Of that, less than 0.1% is allocated to actual land reform. They are not serious about land reform one iota. And guess what happens in the land reform department? That budget that is supposed to be going to land reform, what do they spend it on? They've changed it to agri-parks. They're not even putting it into land, they're putting it into agri-parks. Now, if I was them, I would have stood up today and bragged about the success of the agri-parks. They can't even brag about the success of the agri-park. So they've got failure upon failure. If we have a look at the reams and reams of documents on land reform, that adds up to 90% failure of land reform in all of the other provinces that the ANC run. 90% failure. Then we have a look at the Auditor General. The Auditor General has just put out the 17-18 stats that looks at land reform, and less than 9% of land reform targets have been met. Again, absolute failure from the ANC's part. They talk land, but they do not care about the people on the ground. They do not care about us, not one iota. This debate is actually the ANC being led by the nose by the EFF. can you believe the ruling party of this country is being led by the nose from the EFF? They don't care about land reform one iota.
Order.
Even Thuli Madonsela
Order, member, just 1 second. Honourable David, it's your last opportunity. You're going to miss your speaking turn at the pace you're going on now. Please contain yourself. You're the next speaker. Minister, please continue.
Even Thuli Madonsela agrees that it's an absolutely tardy pace of land reform since for the last 20 years, total failure of the ANC. Let's have a look at the National Development Plan and what the plan actually says it must happen. If you go to Professor Korani, says we've got to set up these land reform committees that drive land reform in each region. It must be private sector led. Guess what? The ANC set up those land reform committees. The concept of district land reform committees was introduced in 2014 to drive land reform within the context of the NDP. Most of these are non-functional due to the lack of budget, number one. Again, no commitment to land reform, no budget put in place. And then guess what the department does? They don't make it led by the private sector, people who understand farming, who are willing to share their knowledge, their mentorship in making a difference in land reform in this country. No, they get totally sidelined. And who do they bring in? They bring in their mates and their pals to head up those committees. Not one of those committees are performing in this province, and guaranteed not one of those committees are performing in any other province of this country. So let's continue with what happens between this province and other provinces with regard to land reform. In this province, the only province in South Africa that audits land reform. If you can't measure, how on earth can you manage? We've just heard the Auditor General says less than 9% of the projects have been enacted in the 2017-18 financial year. Less than 9%. You should be hanging your heads in shame because of that. In this province, we get challenged by the National Department to say land reform is our responsibility. I agree. National, in the ones that we measured in audit of the land reform projects in this province, who initiated that land transfer? It came from the National Department. But we, in this province, in the last few years have put more than 500 million rand in support of land reform. That's why we get 62% success rate. We support those black farmers on their farms. We make sure that they are productive. Where they fall short, we support them. We then add to that the private sector that I spoke about in those committees. We add another 80 million rand to that, not from provincial government budget or from land reform budget. That other 80 million rand comes from the 11 commodity groups in this province. The private sector, they come on board as well, put another, and that's 80 million rand per year support that they give to the National Department's project. But of course, the biggest problem of all, this is about land ownership, and in land ownership, I don't know how many times I've got to bring this list to this house of these farmers who have been promised land by that national department. These farmers, and every single time you read this list, lease expired, no lease, 5, 6, 7 years in a row. And that's a lease. We're not even talking about land ownership here. And of course, is the whole point of this debate not about land ownership? You don't care about our people out there. You don't care about land ownership in this province. You don't care.
Victor, big developer build houses there that is costing now 1.5 million. What happened to those farm workers? They are in a blikkieskamp in Bekweni, next to the station now. Evicted from the land where they grew up, the land that they were working. Why are you not checking the lands that they are using? That is, the soil is still good for agriculture, but they are using it for big developers in Drakensberg. You go to Drakensberg, you go the whole road up to the Drakensberg prison, you will see Bostonmeer, Pearl Valley, and you will see Valdevi. Where's those farm workers? In blikkieskamps. What does the deal want is further exploitation of farm workers through the SARE scheme. In the Western Cape, this model only benefited the skew land ownership to the detriment of farm workers who were robbed of their dividends and late evictions when the land is sold. The spate of land evictions in the province gives a clear picture of how the Western Cape fails in land reform. Between January last year and February 2018 this year, in the city alone, more than 6,606 were demolished and families displaced. This is what the DA understands as land reform. Historically, it has always been about taking land away from the majority for the benefit of minority. The resolutions of the ANC in its Nasrec conference was clear to pursue with greater determination the program of land reform and rural development as part of the program of radical social economic transformation. Expropriation of land with or without compensation will take place as an instrument in the interest of achieving land redistribution, security of tenure and land restitution. This process will be legal as it will be guided by the Section 25 and 36 of the Constitution. The ANC will finalize the expropriation bill with criteria for when no compensation in the case of expropriation will be just and equitable. For instance, unused land, derelict buildings, purely speculative land holding, and also where occupants have strong historical rights like District 6 and title holders do not occupy or use their land, such as labor tendency, informal settlements, and abandoned inner city buildings. It is clear that the DA's opposition to expropriation of land is only to protect the unused pockets of lands and derelict buildings inside the city, which is reserved for big property developers. This fight is not about the rights of the people. Honourable Member MEC Windy, it's about for the rights of the big developers' interests. This is what this fight is about, Beverly, because for you and Windy, it's only about investment, investment, investment against the humanity. Appropriation with or without compensation will be done in an orderly manner to give dignity to the landless masses.
Order. Just finish off, your time has expired. Finish that last sentence.
It is also crucial that it will address the legacy of apartheid spatial planning, where the majority were dumped in distant poverty traps like Atlantis, Elsevier, and Khayelitsha.
Thank you, member. Your time has expired. The Honourable Minister Madikizela.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Let me thank Member Schaefer for bringing this motion to the House so that we can set the record straight as a Democratic Alliance about our stance on this matter, but also tell the people of this province and the people of South Africa the real intention by the ANC and EFF for wanting to amend Section 25 of our Constitution. Deputy Speaker, this debate comes just 8 days before the 24th Freedom Day commemoration on the 27th of April. I say commemoration and not celebration because many people of our country have not yet tasted the freedom that we are talking about. Deputy Speaker, what was central to the struggle for freedom was economic emancipation and through land ownership. Now, we do know about our history, Honourable Member Makak. The key question here is, what have we done about it? What has the ANC done about that particular history that we are talking about? We want to make it very clear here, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Order. Order.
We want to make it very clear here, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that this government is fully committed and support land reform.
Allow the member to speak, please. Honourable Premier.
That was a direct imputation on the integrity of the Honourable Madikizela.
Order. I did not hear. Honourable Magaka, what did you say?
I said he joins all political parties for his own benefit. Under this democracy, that's why we have to appreciate democracy.
Order,
it improves his life.
Please take your seat. You've made your point. Honourable Premier.
The Honourable Magaka is misleading the House, as he did before.
Order.
Before, he said that the Honourable Madikizela is the biggest opportunist there is.
Honourable Magaka, take your seat. I will look at Hansard, and if necessary, I'll come back to the House on that. Minister, you may continue.
I am not faced by
you're testing the chair now.
this member's pettiness, Honourable. Now, we want to make it categorically clear, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that this government, as my colleagues have said here, is fully committed to land reform, both in terms of land restitution. Those people who are dispossessed of their land, they must get their land back, or they must be compensated by the state for their land. And we are also saying, as this government, land redistribution must be fast-tracked by the government so that many of our people who are living in ghastly conditions in former settlements are able to own land. Unfortunately, Mr. Deputy Speaker, this has not been the case under the ANC government. Due to the lack of political will, incompetence and corruption, as it was cited by the High Panel report, which was chaired by the former President Kgalema Motlanthe. All these things have nothing to do with Section 25 of our Constitution. And let me tell you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and tell the people of this province that amending Section 25 will not expedite land reform in South Africa. This motion to expropriate land without compensation is nothing but a populist posture by the EFF, hoping to increase its votes in 2019. Not wanting to be outdone by the EFF, the ANC hopes to hide its failures and is being opportunistic by supporting this motion. The impact of this decision is already felt across the country because we have seen a number of land invasions already because many people are interpreting this motion as a license to grab land. But, Mr. Deputy Speaker, let us look closely at this motion because I am worried that many people who are jumping up and down supporting this motion, some of them have not even read the motion itself. Now, I want to confine myself to point 4 to 6, and I certainly hope that people read this motion. Point number 4 of this motion is saying, we further acknowledge that the current land reform has been fraught with difficulties since its inception in 1994. I wonder whose fault is that? And the pace of land reform has been slow, with only 8% of land transferred to black people since then. And that the recent land audit claims that black people own less than 2% of rural land and less than 7% of, well, the stats are wrong, but this is an admission by the ANC government that it has failed our people. Now, the 5th point is that it recognizes that the center of the present crisis is Section 25. Now, that could not be further from the truth. The property clause, which protects private property rights and requires the state to pay compensation when expropriating land in public interest for a public purpose. Now, I must state it very clear here. In fact, let us look at what Section 25 says, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Now, Section 25 says, it merely protects the property rights from arbitrary state interference, as Honourable Member said. Now, deprivation that is not arbitrary is permissible, which means, Mr. Deputy Speaker, land can be expropriated for the public interest and public purpose. Thus, compensation remains a requirement for expropriation, but not a prerequisite. And therefore, this ANC government cannot hide behind this and say the reason why the land reform is slow in South Africa is because of that. Now, the issue that has been raised here of the willing seller, willing buyer, it's not in the Constitution. It's the policy position that was taken by the ANC, which has failed dismally. And there are many reasons, as stated in the High Panel report, why that policy has failed. Now, what you're not telling us, through you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, you speak a lot about land that must be taken from the people who stole it. You don't even know which land you are going to expropriate. You don't even know who owns that land. You don't even know where that land is. Now, then you are posturing. That's my problem here. Now, the Department of Human Settlements in this province is not only building houses, because that should be the center of our debate here, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We are boasting as this country for having been built more than 4 million houses over the last 24 years, which is a good thing. which is a good thing, by the way. But what we should be talking about is, what are those properties doing to make sure that the people of this country are liberated economically by using those properties? Because what is not happening in other provinces, which is what is happening in this province, is that many people are settled into houses without any title deeds, which means they cannot participate in a very wealthy property market in South Africa, which currently worth 6 trillion rand, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Now, that is what we should be talking about. We must not just build houses, we must make sure that people get title deed so that they become part of this property market, which is so wealthy in South Africa. Now, since 2009, Mr. Deputy Speaker, this government, under this department, has given 91,000 title deeds to people. And this is very important, Mr. Deputy Speaker, because it is a step to address the injustices of the past for those people who were dispossessed of their land. Now, we must make it very clear, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that as the DA, the reasons why we are opposed to this motion, I mean, I've touched some of the reasons. It is our view, and views of many sober-minded South Africans, that Section 25 is not the problem when it comes to land reform in South Africa, but it is the government, ANC government's inability to implement it. As we said, we've been saying this. This was confirmed by the report which was chaired by Khalima Motlanthe. This motion says all land. Now, that is another problem here that we have as a democratic country. It says all land must be expropriated and be kept by the state. Now, the question is which state? The state that cannot even run a spaza shop. Because if you look at all the state-owned enterprises currently, they are all falling apart. Surely, we cannot trust the state really to administer the land reform and make sure that people are given land properly. Now, this undermines the efforts to economically emancipate black people in particular by taking away the right to own property and subject them to state tenancy. What is even more worrying, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is that the current state, as we have been saying, cannot be trusted, given all the shenanigans that are happening in the state-owned enterprises. My colleagues have said that if you look at the facts here, in terms of the reports, if you look at the facts here, Mr. Deputy Speaker, because this is what we should be focusing on. If you look at the facts, you look at the 90% failure rate nationally. Now, the question is, why do you have this failure rate nationally? Because it is true that many people, almost 90% of the people who receive land nationally have sold that land back. The reason for that is because this is a box-ticking exercise for the ANC government. Those people who are never supported with the required skills to make sure that that land becomes productive, but also they were not given the necessary financial assistance to make sure that that land becomes productive, which is something completely opposite to what we are doing in this province, as we heard from Minister Windy, the amount of money that we are putting into the land reform so that those people becomes economically active. Now, but another problem that we have is that while we are talking about this issue of expropriating land without compensation, the current government is even failing to deal with the land claims that are currently before that department. This was confirmed by the minister, the former minister Kukile Nkwinti, when he was answering a question in Parliament, Mr. Deputy Speaker, where he admitted that actually there are more than 6,600 land claims that still remain unresolved. And yet, we are jumping the guns now. We want to expropriate land. We want the state to be the custodian of this land. Now, over and above that, there are 4,300 government-owned farms that are yet to be distributed by government to poor South Africans. Now, what is the government doing about that? Mr. Deputy Speaker, we have almost 2 million hectares of land, of residential land that is owned by government. We still remain unutilized. What is the government doing about that? We have your Wingsfield, we have your Youngsfield in this province, and we have been talking to the national government to make sure that they release this land, and nothing, they are not doing anything about it. Now, it is very, very important, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that we must not play to the gallery about this particular matter.
Minister, your time has expired, but you can finish your last sentence.
Now, the last point that I want to make is that we must heed the call and the advice of the current president of Zimbabwe.
Thank you,
He
member.
is saying to us as South Africans, don't do it. You must learn the lessons
Order.
from that country.
Order.
Thank you
Time is
very much.
right.
Mr. President.
I see the Honourable Bernard Joseph.
The black majority is deprived of land ownership, economic development, and restoration of our dignity continues for more than 366 years. Is definitely not doing justice to that criminal act. The Western Cape, who is notorious for land grabs by white people, they call it encroachment, a trend still ongoing in Stellenbosch, inter alia, is supposed to take the land in restoring the dignity of our lighter skinned Afrikaans-speaking Africans. They were massively affected by the genocide towards their ancestors, extinguished languages, cultural values and norms. A massive redevelopment program has to be initiated and executed by government to re-establish the lost identity. The return of the land to the rightful owners will go a long way to bring back dignity to our once proud owners of property, livestock, and individuals making a living from nature. Until the white man came and regarded inhabitants as subhumans according to the Western standards. The EFF wants the land to be returned to the people of South Africa. The EFF approach is that land should be transferred to the ownership and custodianship of state, which will administer and use land for sustainable development purpose. In the line with the Freedom Charter and a new vision of agrarian revolution, the state should also provide implements and related extension services to help those who work the land to use it productively. Furthermore, the state's procurement of food should prioritize small-scale farmers so that small-scale farming becomes a sustainable economic activity.
Order, Minister. Member, just 1 second. Minister Windy.
Speaker, I know that the member doesn't have a lot of time, but would the member take a question?
Is the member prepared to take a question? The member has 20 seconds left.
20 seconds after my input.
I just wanted to know if he owned his own home.
Order, member. Order. Member, you may proceed.
Oh, may I ask Speaker, Deputy Speaker, what is the time left now?
20 seconds.
Once the state is in control and custodianship of all land, those who are currently using the land or intend using the land will apply to land use licenses, which should be granted only when there is a purpose for the land being applied for. A maximum of 30 years can be placed on all land leases applied by private corporations and individuals.
Order.
Of the state.
Thank you, member. Your time has now really expired, with the injury time included. Your time has expired.
Deputy
No, yeah, I've given you extra time already.
No, man, this guy.
Order. Order, member Joseph.
Can I finish the sentence?
I will be lenient. Please continue and finish quickly.
Enkosi Kakulu. The people of South Africa and Western Cape in particular want their land back. The DA must stop telling lies about food security, property rights, title deeds, disinvestments to the poor. Rather engage on how best can we expropriate land without compensation.
Thank you, member.
Benefit
that is now finished.
Every single South Africa.
The Honourable Jantjie now for his real speech.
Baie dankie, young speaker. Voor ek 4 warm pole ingooi.
Order. Order. You may proceed.
Voor ek warm 4 kole daar en hy kan gooi, kan ek asseblief iets saggies lees ad young speaker. Our conference resolution reads, the ANC should, as a matter of policy, pursue expropriation of land without compensation. This should be pursued without destabilizing the agricultural sector.
Order, member. Just 1 second. Honourable Chief Whip.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I know that the Honourable Member thinks he's very important, but the staff don't have to turn on 2 microphones for him.
without endangering food security in our country and without undermining economic growth and job creation. Large tracts of land in the Western Cape, which is led by the DA, are owned by individuals, specifically whites, whilst black people are crammed into shacks. Now let me give you an example. In the West Coast, there is a farm called Samstan, Samstan Farm, owned by one white man. It stretches from Malmesbury right up near Citrusdal. Agrippidae. It stretches from Malmesbury right up to Citrusdal. One farm, one white man. This is what the DA does not want us to expropriate without compensation. It is such things. Expropriating this land is non-negotiable. On the 21st of March, on the Human Rights Day, Social Justice Coalition was trying to come to assistance to help you. They marched on Human Rights Day. They marched for the following things. They said you need to prioritize urban land for social housing. They also, in their memorandum, gave you an example that the court judgment in relation to Maracana in Philippi had judged that you either the city sells that land or expropriate that land, and they were recommending to you as SJC, let that land be expropriated. This is what the DA does not want to do, because Maracana semense kan ma frakken Philippi. That's what they'll say. That's what they'll say. The DA poses as champion of Constitution Property Clause 25. But where was the DA when this constitutional provision was written? The DA was there, protecting the angry white libertarian interest. And its representative, and may her soul rest in peace, Dean Smarts, was the loudest voice opposing this very same clause. The newspaper archives are full of quotes of her opposition in the very same clause the DA processes now to protect. In fact, she proclaimed to have voted against it. The old National Party rep, Sheila Kamara, who later joined the DA, also fought for the provision of that clause. Since the DA now wants to preserve the land reform provision of our Constitution, it must know that it wants to retain a variety of requirements that actually allows no compensation when land is expropriated or bought for restitution and tenure purposes. This is what the DA wants to protect and keep untouched. There is no surprise about it. The DA was there during the farm worker uprisings in this province and opposed any increase in minimum wages to these poor and vulnerable people. Now it again opposes security of tenure of farm workers and rural development that must come from land reform. The true reason why the Mal DAR opposes land reform is precisely because it protects the right of mostly white farm owners.
Order.
It is very clear.
Order.
I pose.
Minister?
No. The member is misleading the House. We are not opposed to land reform. That's what he said.
Thank you, member. Order. You've made your point. It's not a point of order, but you've made your point.
Let us bias here. This here.
Please continue.
It is clear that DA does not want to treat all people fair and just. It only advances the interests of the haves and big business. The racist DA only mounts this land reform wild horse for the sake of right-wing propaganda in order to scare people and use Swargeval tactics, because traditional white DA supporters are leaving the party in droves. They are leaving the party in droves as we speak. The DA is a party driven by hate and fear. And this can be seen in the propaganda it shares on social media and other media, alarming people about property rights with preposterous and ridiculous views. It does not add value at all. Instead of submitting its argument at the parliamentary committee to review the Constitution, this untransformed DA brings hot a verbal salad to this legislature, as you have been listening. The DA did not and still does not understand land reform in our context. Perhaps it should invite UWC's PLUS team for a crash course for them to understand that. The DA prefers gated communities and white reserves across the metro and other areas. It only sells available prime land to aligned developers. It refuses to confront and change apartheid colonial legacies in our country. The liberal DA and many of its so-called libertarian founders always were biased towards landowners, starting with unqualified suffrage envisaged by Helen Suzman and the Liberal Party, knowing that the majority of people in this land was dispossessed and prevented from owning land. How disingenuous can a party be?
Order.
The DA wants to get rid of Cape Town Mayor Patricia de Lille because she is in favor of integrating poor and vulnerable people into leafier areas. That's the enigste rede. Waarom no sele, vote of no confidence, and they are failing, they are going to fail again. She is going to continue whether you like it or not. She's the mayor, she'll decide when she doesn't want to stay there. Jy is any sort man. Jy is any sort. Jy weet nie wat om te doen nie oor Patricia de Lille. Jy weet niks nie. This could break the chain of apartheid spatial ownership patterns if the de Lille succeeds. But they have to get her out because she's just about to succeed. Viva Patricia, viva! But the DA does not want that.
Order.
And all they want, Patricia must go, and we say, stay Patricia, stay. Viva Patricia, viva, donkey.
Order. Please come to order. I see the Honourable Gisela.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Order.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, firstly, let us be honest here. You see this document? It's the DA document on land reform, which we took as a resolution in our Federal Congress a few weeks ago. And we are saying in this document, we need dignity for black people.
Order.
We need growth for the economy. We need more jobs and to sustain the development of all people in this country. And that's what the ANC does not understand.
Order.
Now, furthermore, members speak here and they talk about all fancy things. But let me just tell you that, as it was said earlier, only 0.14% was budgeted by the national government to expedite the program of land reform. Are you really serious? 0.14%? We have not started. No, wait. Now, when you talk about well-located land, well-located private land, and you want to expropriate, you must really ask Honorable Dagmo. Maybe he can answer that. Honorable Magacha says here that the DA of PW Botha and Helen Suzman, I will just take Helen Suzman and own her. But you must ask Honorable Ace, who's PW Botha. I thought that as a person who's a trained history teacher, you would know better. I'm worried about those students you taught history in Luxolo High School.
Order.
The ANC talks here, Honorable Deputy Speaker, about black people. But they're not referring to the question. They're not referring to the Korana. They're not referring to the Cape Koi. They're not referring to the Griquas. They're not referring to the Nama. Because for the ANC, it's about the majority and majoritarianism. We are talking here about the rights of all people in this country, including the minorities in South Africa. Now, let us come to Honorable Davids.
Order.
Honorable David says...
Order. Just 1 second, Honourable Chief Whip.
It's intolerable, Honourable Davids. She goes on like a machine gun. She's had a turn to speak, Deputy Speaker. Can we go?
Order. I take your point and I agree. The Honourable Davids. Honourable Davids, you've had your turn. Please contain yourself with the dejections. It's becoming a running commentary now. Honourable Gisela, you may continue.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, let me give a lecture to Honourable Davids. You know, she was the MECO member of rural development in Dragonstein municipality. she can tell this house now if I'm not telling the truth. She never gave anyone any rural development kind of a benefit. You never gave anyone a house when you were there. We never gave anyone a farm when you were there. In fact, what the ANC did, we have Valdevie development that she's referring to and giving it to the Democratic Alliance. Honorable Ace may have signed that development to the rich because he was here as the minister, and Honorable Gyanki later came in. Here he was the minister. They know nothing about poor people. The Pearl Valley that Honorable David talked about, it was her own ANC government that signed that development, removing black people, poor people, colored people, because they were poor working in the fields. You remove them, you give it to rich friends of yours.
Order. Just come to order before you continue. Order. Member, you may continue.
Masco, now we are talking about all of this private land. We must ask Honorable Ace in 1999.
Order. Honorable Janki, we can't continue like this.
We must ask Honorable Ace in 1999, before the amalgamation of municipalities in Overstrand, that side, they've given 7 parcels of land to one company, one developer. And remember, Ace, through you, or the Honorable Deputy Speaker, they gave this private company to develop all well-located land. You see, Honorable Ace, there's a person to ask about well-located land. Now, when the ANC took over in 2000, when we took over in 2000 and 2002, the DA government, we kept with that relationship, wanting to change it. Before we did it, ANC came in 2002. What did they do? They continued. They continued to service only the rich. In 2006, when we came in, then we started to say, let us change this nonsense. We took all this land from one person and only transferred one land to to this gentleman. And that was the scalp hook that we are talking about. And we are resolving it.
Order.
Because only the DA cares about all people. Only the DA cares about white people, about black people, about colored people. Because we know that South Africa needs to embrace all people in this country. And only us know it better, nobody else. Lastly, Deputy Speaker, there's some fabrication of truth. And now someone comes with some economics and say that one person owns the land between Mamasbury and Cedarburg. I was going to say, if I was not here, that person is lying. But if that person is here, that person is not telling the truth. Because there's multiple farmers that own land there, not one person that is owning. Now what we need, they must employ researchers. You need to employ proper researchers. I'm worried about you. This is disappointing that we have got ANC here that can't debate. Nothing. It's embarrassing. It's disappointing. EFF, I can't even start about you. I can't even start about you. It's a joke.
Thank you, member. Order now. Order. Order. This debate is now concluded. We move on to the next topic. We move on to interpellations. Honourable Davids, I'm also talking to you. And whoever is busy with you, Mr. Windy, Honourable Makisela, please attend now. We move on to interpellations. The first interpellation will not be dealt with by agreement. We move on to the second interpellation. Honourable Maseko to Minister Madikizela. I see Minister Madikizela.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. My department has requested USDG or Urban Settlement Development grant funding in the amount of 275 million rands from the City of Cape Town, and to date the city has approved 127 million rands, resulting in a substantial financial shortfall. This has been mitigated in the interim by making changes to the project program and moving the planned Symphony Way road dwelling forward until funding becomes available to proceed. And also in terms of acquiring development rights, the project has and is still experiencing major processing delays at the municipal level in securing statutory approvals. The developer is required to obtain approvals, amongst others, for site development plans and building plans before construction can commence. The operating procedure to obtain referred approvals, especially while bearing in mind that the magnitude of the project yielding 4,188 units, can be a tedious process that has a major impact on project delivery deadlines. On average, the delay so far is about 6 months. Conflict with local development building forums, and the extent of the project site covers 2 municipal wards, for which there are a number of local builders forums. And of course, as we know, in developments of this nature, there are always conflicts between people who want to be accommodated in the development in terms of labor and in terms of subcontracting, which is, a normal type of challenge that we face. These factors have caused numerous threats on site and tools down. Contractor strikes that have gone as far as the site being closed by a forum to prevent any activity on the site. These events have called for urgent intervention and engagement between my department, the developer, and subcontractors. These actions by local forums causes developer to take strain in meeting interim targets and essential deadlines, contributing to department's overall service delivery. To date, these delays have caused a 3-month delay to the project program. Amongst other problems that we have there is a water shortage, because as a result of the restricted use of municipal water, the developer was forced to sink boreholes, requiring a water use license that resulted in a 14-day project delay. This slow source of water also has an impact on the wet works production. And liquidation of subcontractors. The contractor commissioned to undertake the construction of bulk civil engineering services were liquidated around 15 December 2017. Although a new contractor was appointed in February 2018, the pump station for sewerage was not timelessly completed.
Member, your time has expired for the first chance. Honourable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, Bella CBD program is a truly groundbreaking project that is a Catholic mixed-use, high-density and different income-level residential project. This clearly demonstrates that the DA-led Western Cape government is committed to social cohesion because people from different backgrounds are brought into one community. It is therefore clear for all to see that not only are we building houses, but we are also integrating communities. What makes this project so unique is that it includes B&G housing opportunities, rental units, student accommodation, the split housing program, and military veterans. To date, 630 social housing units have been developed and have been rented out, and approximately 1,000 open market rental units are under construction. As the Minister mentioned, however, the only challenge that we are currently sitting with is the beneficiary housing list, which must be vetted by the National Department of Military Veterans. Let's be clear, the development is happening, but the issue is the ANC-led national government, because from this project, the military veterans have to benefit, is failing to vet and to identify who are the beneficiaries. We do have, by the way, the department that is strictly dealing with the military veterans. Now, as a reminder to my colleagues across the floor, the list of the military veterans has to be vetted by the department to identify the beneficiaries, not by us in the DA-led Western Cape government or any of our municipalities. The sad situation is that the military veterans seems to be unknown to this department. Identifying beneficiaries and providing veterans with homes has become a prolonged process. And this is the government that say they can champion land reform. This underscores how badly the ANC-led national government are performing. After nearly 24 years, they have no idea who should be benefiting as a military veteran from the housing. However, as much as this has been a challenge for the department, this program has managed to build 102 units for the military veterans. Deputy Speaker, this particular development will lead to the establishment of social and gap housing, which the city really needs at this stage. Now, my question to the minister is, regarding the above mentioned and to date, does the department have a clear indication of how many veterans will be beneficiaries within the Western Cape? I thank you.
Thank you. The ANC, Honourable Davids.
Thank you, Chair. Deputy Speaker, just a point of order. If you look to the question on the paper, what are the challenges faced by the BLR CBD project and how they impact on the time frames? The last point of Member Maseko, I think it's a new question that she's asking
Well,
the
it's
minister.
part of the debate, so I can't rule
Yes,
that one. Please continue.
But I do not understand the chair of the standing committee bringing this question here today. It is because we recently awarded vast additional amounts in the adjustment budget and the annual budget to the BLR CBD project. The chair should know that, and also know national government in fact brought real funding. But one knows why she's anxious about that project. It is because the DA is very bad at spending budgets and especially sticking to time frames. We see clearly in the media reports that Cape Town under DA management fails the people of the metro dismally. According to those reports, Mayor Patricia de Lille is in trouble with the DA caucus because he wrote a letter to a mayoral committee members and told them to work harder. They fell behind in spending more than 4 billion rand.
Order. You raised a point about what the honourable member said, but you are now totally off the point as well.
No, Deputy Speaker, this is on the point because it's the money that she was supposed to spend on the CBD that was not spent.
Okay, carry on.
They fell behind in spending more than 4 billion rand on the capital budget, and with only 2 months to go, they have already spent or committed to less than half of the total budget. It is a disgrace and shows that DA does not care to bring services and relief to the poorest residents.
Thank you, Honourable Maseko.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I think, Deputy Speaker, for the past 2 sittings, I've been talking about the Bella CBD program because it's one of the benchmarking integrated development that we have really championed in human settlements. And Member Davis definitely knows that. Because in the CBD, in the Bella CBD, you have all the programs that are really showcasing if we do integrated development and taking the communities, whether from the poor or from the rich, for them to live together, to have a codependency on each other. The issue of the money that he mentions that is being spent, that's news, and she's doing the, I'm sorry. She is also part of the standing committee that we are doing an oversight. We have never seen an underspending that is there. She knows if there's one project that the Department of Human Settlements with the city have championed, besides the challenges that are there, is the Bella CBD. Okay. So, building with a mortar and brick only forms a structure, Member Davids, through you, Deputy Chair. But the Provincial Department of Human Settlements is about building communities, and that is showcasing in the Bella CBD. This project, the Bella CBD project, is the epitome of integrated development. It is about creating a codependent, interactive community who help and support one another. My question is, therefore, how do we make our communities to understand the value of ownership of their homes, and how long will it take for the beneficiaries of this project to receive their title deeds so that they can also be included in the economic mainstream of the province of Western Cape.
Thank you. Time has expired. Honourable Davids.
But the Speaker, the Minister has spoke why the challenges of that project is the municipal level development site plan, building plans that is not approved. He said about funding that they are working together with the municipality, but there's a shortage of funding. He says that the deadline is back with 6 months, and then also we have a problem with the local forums that is also giving a challenge. So I'm saying, the Deputy Speaker, that if the DA cannot spend the allocated budget, why now? If it can only blame the DA itself for the problems, because the local municipality is DA governed. The DA should not come and tell us what problems or challenges it has. It should bring and implement solutions. The DA volunteer to govern. DA people in all positions are paid to do the job. The DA is handsomely rewarded to bring the solutions to the table. That is your job, DA. But the DA complains so much. It's more interested to hear how big the developers
Your time has expired. Honourable Maseku.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The DA is building houses for the communities in Western Cape. The DA is improving the living conditions of the people of Western Cape. The department, what it needs to do, it must continue to prioritize the need for all stakeholders to understand their partnership expectations and requirements in relation to the government function. This is the responsibility not of the department or the DA, the ANC also. This ensures mutual beneficial outcomes which form the basis of the partnerships agreements. When you build houses, you create partnerships with the communities. I commend the Minister Madikizela for exceedingly creative, livable, accessible, safe, resilient, and multi-opportunity settlements. This is a good indication of when good governance, this DA government, makes a huge difference in the communities. Again, you didn't hear that. This is a good indication of when good governance makes a huge difference. Under the DA government, that's exactly what we are implementing. The Bela CBD is an example of good governance and putting value for our money. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Minister Madikizela.
Now, this question was directed to Minister Madikizela, the Minister of Human Settlements in the province. Now, Minister Madikizela, since 2009, has never sent a single cent back to the Treasury. Now, I need to correct that. Now, when we talk about failure to spend, and I think that comment is misdirected. Now, the reason why we are responding to these challenges is because they are there. But we are not responding in the manner in which I did because we want to complain. The questions were asked and I'm responding, but we are always faced with these challenges and we put measures in place to make sure that ultimately houses are built, ultimately the budget is spent. If you look at the current expenditure of this department as I'm speaking to you now, it's 100%. In fact, it's more than 100% because we received additional 100 million from the National Department and we spent it. So let us not then give the impression that this department is sending money back. Not a single cent since I took over this department was sent back to the National Treasury. Now, some of the issues that were raised here is that, remember, David, the letter that you are speaking, if my CFO fails to spend the money, I cannot go out there and grandstand and lambast my CFO in the media. I must take responsibility as the leader of this department. You can't then praise, yes, you can't then praise someone who lambasts, the people who are reporting to her publicly. You must take responsibility if the people who are reporting to you are not doing their work. Let us not grandstand. That is why, if there's something wrong in my department, I will never come here and say, no, it's not me. It's my HOD or my CFO. Ultimately, I am responsible for what is happening in this department. If things are good, I must take credit. If things are bad, I must take responsibility.
Thank you, Minister. Your time
Thank
has
you.
expired. That's the end of this interpellation. We move on to the next one. Honourable Max to Minister Marais. I see Minister Marais.
Mix vir die interpellasie. Die uitdagings kan 'n kombinasie van 'n wye spektrum van faktore wees, insluitende die volgende: die beskikbaarheid van 'n internetvoetspoor in afgeleë landelike gebiede, geen internettoegang as gevolg van tegnologieverwantheid probleme aan die kant van die diensverskaffer, gebrek aan hulpbronne en of vertraagde tegniese ondersteuning, vertraagde installering van meubels en elektriese kabels aan die kant van die munisipaliteit wat die installering van die toerusting vertraag, gebrek aan gemeenskapsbetrokkenheid en ondersteuning wat lei tot inbrake en of skade aan toerusting, dis die misdaadfaktor wat altyd in ag geneem moet word, kabeldiefstal, veilige bewaring en versekering van toerusting by biblioteke, langtermynvertragings as gevolg van die afhanklikheid van breëbandkonnektiwiteit in gevalle van biblioteekopgraderings en waar nuwe biblioteke gebou is. Die voordele is die verskaffing van inligting en kommunikasietegnologie aan landelike Weskaapse openbare biblioteke, werkskepping, die gemeenskap kan die hulpbronne by die biblioteek gebruik om aansoek te doen vir werk wat die totale aantal werklose jeugdiges tot 'n minimum beperk. Geregistreerde universiteitsstudente kan die hulpbronne by biblioteke gebruik om navorsing te doen, werkdragte in te handig en aanlyn toetse te doen. En dit verbind die biblioteek met die wêreld. Baie dankie.
Dankie, die agbare Max.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. On the basis of what the Minister just informed this House, I must say I must compliment the Minister for the outstanding effort to provide the rural communities in the Western Cape with libraries equipped with broadband and Wi-Fi. Now, this commitment is underpinned by the DA's aim to uplift the poorest of the society and provide an open opportunity society for all. Now, I'm also of the view, Minister, that you will ensure that the outstanding 41 libraries will be upscaled because your commitment to the development and upliftment of rural communities is demonstrated by this project so far. Now, I'm also further of the view that providing internet connection to the Western Cape rural libraries is to ensure improved literacy rates as beneficiaries will have access to internet and e-books, enhanced job opportunities as beneficiaries will be able to search and apply for jobs online as you indicated, improved classroom performance as students from poorer households use the internet in their school assignments, stronger small businesses as entrepreneurs with limited internet access can research their market better and engage in online market sales. Now, in the light of what you have said, Minister, and the DA's commitment and efforts to ensure that rural communities have access to connected libraries, I want to ask you, Minister, how many people per community have accessed their local library's internet? It is one thing to have it there, and on the other hand, you have to ensure that this benefit, people are aware of it and make use of it. Thanks.
Thank you. The agbare Gopi.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, the library in the rural communities being the only source that are there for unemployed youth, for students that need to use the facility. The computers are not sufficient for those rural communities to be used by unemployed youth and also by students. And also the time that is allocated per person, especially for the youth that must go and come and do their assignment and research. And on top of it, then there is a fee that is being charged when you are a youth that must do research, and for the printing, there's a fee that is being charged, a fee of R1.20 per page. So we are not really assisting the rural community if a child that is being supported by a grant, or sometimes being a child that is supported by a grandmother that must still be fed and also go to do assignment for R120 per page. So also do not know if the minister know how many computers is there per rural library, and how many, like now the chairperson is asking how many people is being serviced by those. So how many computers is servicing the amount that the minister is now going to answer.
Thank you, member. Your time has also expired. Agbare Max.
Deputy Speaker, what the minister actually said is very reassuring that our communities got access to libraries and internet facilities. And as I mentioned before, having access to internet ensures a higher literacy rate, a higher employment rate, improves students' performance in classrooms and the development of small-scale entrepreneurs. Now, I must also, as from my position as chairperson of the committee, then assist the department in also requesting both rural and non-rural areas to engage their communities through proper communication, for example, posters, school bulletins, local papers, advertising boards to inform residents of the benefits of libraries and internet access. I also call on local libraries and their communities to host ICT seminars where possible so that residents can truly reap the benefits of these facilities. Deputy Speaker, when I studied advanced customary law, they said in the list, in the literacy, they said that before customary law was codified, when an old man died, it is equally like a library burning down, because it was a nodal point of knowledge. Now, this libraries is our nodal point of knowledge for our communities. Now, nonetheless, I'm pleased to hear that there has been a positive response from our people, and as the minister indicated. But I also like to ask the minister, how are these libraries informing their communities of their services, as I indicated before? Thanks.
Thank you. The Honourable Gopi again.
The Chair is speaking about more people being serviced. That will not solve the challenges that we are having in the rural communities, because there is challenges at the moment that we have a lot of unemployed youth, we have a lot of students that need that only library that is in that community. The time is not enough for those students that are already using and those unemployed that are already using that library. To create more people to come to the library won't solve the problem that we are having. We need to have more computers. We need to have more time for those students. We need to have no fee, especially for the students, and especially for the students that are poor. Because a student that is poor, that needs to get to that library to do their research, to print their work, their assignment. If that grandma say, I don't have a 10 rand, that child can't go and put his assignment in. And that child can fail. So we need to work on a mechanism how to get rid of this challenge of charging a fee.
Your time has expired. Agbare Max.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. You know, if I can recall during the appropriation debate, the minister mentioned, also alluded to this, as well as input now in on this question. The only inference I can get to is that from the minister's response is that the DA-led government and this department is moving towards making the Western Cape the sports and culture center of South Africa, and is creating conditions for access and mass participation, talent identification, and skills development. Now, for this, I must commend the minister and the department, and I have But I have to ask, although I'm satisfied with the performance of the department and the leadership of the minister, it is important that the minister inform us as part of your evaluation, Minister, on the libraries connected so far. What has the feedback been from our communities?
Thank you, Minister Marais.
Baie dankie. The Rural Library Connectivity Project received a cash injection from broadband funds during the 2013-14 financial year and managed to procure equipment for 83 new sites and refresh equipment for a further 40 existing sites. And during the remaining 4 years, the project continued to expand the service to 16, 15, 5 and 3 sites respectively. In total, 223 libraries have benefited from this project. Our funding comes from conditional grant, the Library Service Equitable Share ring-fenced funding, and then the Western Cape Government Broadband Project. Die gebruik van die biblioteke, ek het nie die presiese getal nie, agbare Max, maar ek kan vir u uitvind, maar op my besoeke, en ek doen dit gewoonlik onaangekondig, is ons biblioteke vol. En dit laat my kom by die probleem wat gebeur is, dat die kinders word dan, of die studente word beperk tot 'n sekere tyd om te werk op die rekenaar, om almal kans te gee. Maar daar's toegewyde personeel wat dit baie goed bestuur. En ek weet ook dat waar daar probleme is met van ons kinders wat werklik waar nie die papier kan betaal nie, help die personeel wel vir hulle. En as daar gevalle is wat jy spesifiek van weet, kan jy asseblief vir my dit laat weet, dan kan ons kyk wat ons in daai gevalle kan doen. Dan wil ek net vir sê, ons is verbind om dit uit te rol na die meeste van ons biblioteke, so ver soos wat ons befondsing dit toelaat. En die internet, ek dink ek het dit genoem, die internet verseker dat dit gebruik word. Ek weet byvoorbeeld in Beaufort Wes, is daar van die kinders wat tot 5 km ver kom, net in die middag, om by die biblioteek te kan wees. En ons biblioteke is gewoonlik heeltemal vol, en ek wil u nooi om van ons biblioteke te gaan besoek. Ek weet die Eiween Park, waar daar geweldig probleme nou is die biblioteek die veilige hawe vir ons kinders en vir ons ouer mense om dit te besoek. En dan ook Abbotsdale en Mamasbury is 'n pragtige biblioteek. Is maar net 2 van die 223 en ek het die lys as u dit graag wil hê.
Dankie minister, die tyd is nou ook verstreke. That brings us to the end of interpellations. We move on to questions on the question paper. First one, Honourable Joseph, again to Minister Marais. I see Minister Marais.
Dankie, agbare Joseph. Die departement ondersteun jaarliks die Maleierkore, Kerskoorrade en Kaapse Klopse Rade met finansiële bydrae uit die tweede nuwe jaar geleentheid, sowel as die kompetisies waaraan hulle deelneem. Die organisasies, dis die tweede deel van die vraag, die organisasies moet aan die vereistes vir nie-regeringsorganisasies, sowel as die finansiële voorvereistes soos bepaal, voldoen ten einde toegang tot befondsing te verkry. Dit sluit onder andere in dat die organisasie geregistreer moet wees, 'n bankrekening in naam van die organisasie moet hê, bewys moet lewer van 'n effektiewe, doeltreffende en deursigtige finansiële bestuur en die departement van 'n sakeplan en verwante dokumentasie moet voorsien. Hulle moes ook voldoen het aan alle voorwaardes vir toelaas wat in die verlede ontvang is en die finansiële en narratiewe verslae soos vereis ingedien het. En die organisasies wat finansiering ontvang, moet die nodige terugvoeringsverslae indien en personeel moet, waar moontlik, die geleenthede bywoon. Verder terugvoering kom van mediadekking en persoonlike besoeke. Baie dank.
Agbare Joseph.
Dankie, Deputy Speaker. Baie dankie aan die minister vir die antwoord op hierdie vraag. Ek wil net by die minister weet of daar intergouvernementele verhoudinge bestaan tussen die provinsie en die stad Kaapstad en of daar ook gepraat word oor die verskillende behoeftes van hierdie organisasie. Want elkeen se behoeftes natuurlik is verskillend. Natuurlik is daar ook 'n verskillende finansiële model wat bepaal ook hoe hulle besigheidsplanne saamstel.
Minister.
Dankie. Agbare lid, die verhouding tussen die provinsiale departement vir kultuur en sport, in hierdie geval nou kultuur, is professioneel tussen ons en die stad. En die kwessies wat probleme sou wees, word bespreek. En ons het dan ook gereelde vergaderings met die Baleierkore, die Kerskoorrade en die Kaapse Klopse Rade om die verhouding glad te laat verloop, sodat hierdie gebeurtenisse kan plaasvind sonder enige haakplekke.
Agbare Joseph.
Baie dankie, Deputy Speaker. Net die laaste punt op die vraag wil ek graag weet, net verder gaan op die finansiële model. Men is het wel aangedui al die criteria wat nagevolg moet word, maar ek wil net weer verwys dat elke organisasie het ook verskillende behoeftes. Byvoorbeeld sommige van hierdie kulturele aktiwiteite gebeur in die stad en sommige gebeur in die platteland. Aan die ander woord, hulle moet ver afstande ry. En daar's uniforms, daar's ander administratiewe koste, daar's instrumente wat baie duur is wat hierdie organisasies gebruik. Ek wil weet of dit ook in ag geneem word as deel van die kriteria. Dankie.
Dankie agbare lid. Ja, dit word in ag geneem. Gewoonlik het die besigheidsplanne of die versoeke wat ons kry van die verskillende rade het dit afgebreek en presies wat hulle nodig het. So ons kyk daarna, want elkeen soos ek sê het sy eie behoeftes en ons befonds na aanleiding van ons befondsing wat ons beskikbaar het en na hulle behoeftes.
Honorable Gopi, is dit 'n opvolgvraag? Kan voortgaan.
Ek wil net weet van die minister is dat behalwe hierdie wat hier gelys is, ander organisasies wat nuwe organisasies is wat aansoek doen en is daar enige hulp aan hulle verskaf en as hulle afgewys is, gaan die departement terug na die mense toe en sê wat is die redes dat hulle afgewys is, waar moet hulle aan werk, wat moet hulle korrek en so aan.
Minister.
Dankie agbare lid. Ja, daar is van die wil ek amper sê kleiner organisasies wat aansoek doen op 'n gereelde basis. Ons kry byna daagliks versoeke en ons gaan terug na hulle toe van die wat byvoorbeeld op die met die jaarprogram aansoek gedoen het en nie befondsing gekry het nie. Gaan ons terug en sê ook waarom kon ons nie vir hulle geld gee nie en indien ons die vorms ontvang die departement en daar's sekere vorms of inligting nie beskikbaar nie, dan vra ons vir hulle om dit te stuur voordat die departement daaroor besluit. Ja.
Laaste vraag, agbare Gopi.
Na hoe lang tydperk gaan die departement terug na die organisasie wat aansoek gedoen het?
Die ideale tyd is ons sê 7 dae moet hulle teruggaan. Ek weet daar is gevalle wat dit nie gebeur het nie, wat ons persoonlik verskoning gevra het en want sekere aspekte het langer geneem om antwoord op te gee, maar ons gaan terug na almal toe. Maar die ideale tyd is 7 dae om te sê ons ontvang erkenning en as daar probleme is wat reggestel moet word.
Thank you. We move on to the second question. Honorable Joseph to Minister Meyer, Minister of Finance. Minister Meyer.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. The question of the Standing Committee Chair on Finance has a specific context. The 1% VAT increase is therefore a context which we need to unpack in this House. The ANC has looted taxpayers' money. The ANC has mismanaged SARS with a 48 billion rand less tax collection. The ANC has caused an additional 48 billion rand fruitless and wasteful expenditure as reported by the Auditor General. The ANC has also created a bloated civil service that now costs us 580 billion rand. As a result of the ANC mismanagement, the ANC government is now punishing the poor with a 1% VAT increase. Honourable Deputy Speaker and members, the National Treasury has confirmed that they are implementing these tax measures in response to the ANC unsustainable debt. And I'm quite shocked that they are so open about it. It is in this document that was tabled in the National Assembly. But more so, Honourable Deputy Speaker, It also confirms that your ANC national government confirmed that increasing taxes in a low-growth context when South Africans are struggling is not desirable. This is again an indication and confirmation of the ANC national government that 1% VAT increase is not desirable. It is in this book. Your ANC government has also confirmed that corruption and wasteful expenditure under the ANC has eroded the taxpayers' morality. It is all here in this book. Honourable Deputy Speaker, VAT is therefore a type of consumption tax that is charged. Okay, I will lecture you. You ask for a lecture. Thank you, Honourable Member.
Order,
You've
Minister.
asked for a lecture. It's
Minister,
free.
continue, please.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, VAT. Honourable Lecker, you've asked for a free lecture. It is coming. Honourable Lecker, VAT is a type of consumption tax.
Order.
Honourable Lecker.
Minister, speak through the chair, please.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, VAT is a consumption tax. Honourable Lecker, VAT is a consumption tax. That it is a consumption tax, Honourable Deputy Speaker, that is charged at the gross margin. And what this means, Honourable Deputy Speaker, when you charge a tax at the gross margin, it means that you collect tax at every stage in the production, manufacturing, distribution, sales process of an item. For example, Honourable, what's your surname again? Davids. Honourable Davids, that jacket that you wear, it was first a very expensive jacket. It is taxed at a gross margin. Now that jacket, every stage of the production, it was taxed because it's a value-added tax at the gross margin. So what this means, every time the tax is added in the value chain, value-added tax, Honourable Member Davis, Joseph, VAT is essentially an additional cost levied on businesses calculated every step of the value chain with refunds and claimbacks. Therefore, a VAT increase means that not just an increased cost burden for everyone in the process of bringing goods and services to the market, but also an increase in the fiscal and economic burden. Secondly, it also impacts the added costs are often multiplied and passed on to consumers' shoulders, in particular poor households who have a higher consumption budget proportionate to for necessities than any other households will be disproportionately impacted by the VAT increase. Hence, VAT increase is bad for the poor. The impact on the VAT increase on the economy is dependent on how responsive purchases, that's government, business and consumers, are to the increase in the price of goods and services. If purchasers are responsive to the price increase, it would likely result in a decrease in consumption, impacting negatively on the economy. The impact on consumption of goods and services, it is the demand, may then also have an impact on the production of goods and services, in other words, also on the supply side of the economy. And hence, sales tax, Honourable Deputy Speaker, are regressive, and VAT is a sales tax. Sales taxes are regressive in nature, meaning that although the tax rate is the same on all consumer items, greater burden will be placed on lower income groups, since the absolute tax increase is larger proportion of the lower income groups. Honourable Deputy Speaker, the Davis Tax Commission highlighted that an increase in VAT would have a greater negative impact on inequality than an increase in personal income tax or corporate tax. It further recommended that should it be necessary to increase the standard rate of VAT, it will be important for the fiscal authorities to think carefully about compensation mechanisms for the poor who will be adversely affected by the increase. The poor suffers because the ANC steals.
Honourable Joseph.
Thank you, Minister, for the response. I just would want to say to the Minister that this question was also placed in front of, at the Budget Committee, in front of when National Treasury visited this committee. And the question was asked, how will this 1% VAT increase impact on service delivery within government? Because government is the creator of jobs, particularly the education and the health department, the biggest department, public works. How would this impact then on service delivery? Well, is there 1% added from national government to this province, or will the money come from the current budget? Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the Chairperson of the Standing Committee on Finance. The Western Cape government budget is 62.7 billion rand for the 2018-19 financial year. The Provincial Treasury is currently in the process in determining the exact quantum of the VAT increase on the budget and will further provide detail later on. But, Honourable Deputy Speaker, the preliminary rough estimates that we have done in the Treasury based on the goods and services indicates that the 1% VAT increase in this government will be between 170 and 200 million rand. But I have to mention, Honourable Deputy Speaker, the national government has made no provision, Honourable Chairperson of the Standing Committee, no provision in this budget for that. What is also concerning, Honourable Deputy Speaker, is that the Department of Transport and Public Works, with a budget of 7 billion rand, 60% of that budget of Transport and Public Works is going exclusively on contracts and procurement. And those budget, 60% of that budget will be subjected to a 1% increase. So, in short, there will be service delivery implications as a result of this reckless, irresponsible behavior of the national government to increase the VAT with 1% from 14 to 15%.
Honourable Joseph.
Thank you, Minister. I would just like to ask then, in the light of this real situation that the government have to look at the same budget and include the 1% VAT increase, what alternative measures or savings will the Department or Treasury propose to manage the situation of the 1% increase?
Deputy Speaker, we are on record during the medium-term budget policy statement in our discussions last year. We are also on record because that is an indication of the 3-year budget priorities of this government. We are determined and we believe that it is unnecessary, it was unnecessary to increase the 1% VAT because you can reduce the size of the bloated national executive with Zuma. For some of you will know that Premier Zille and I 3 times a year meet with the President in the Union buildings. But when we go in that meeting, we see a bloated cabinet of almost 60, 70 people sitting in that meeting. We, 74, thank you, Honourable Leader of Government Business, we believe that we can save money to the tune of 13.8 billion rand over the medium term by cutting the size, because you don't need the whole national executive of the ANC in the cabinet. But it was necessary because now then, no, not yet. No, not you asked for it. It's on record in hands up. And so, what we want.
There's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong. It's better representation to your voters. But we can save 13.8 billion rand by reducing the Zuma's cabinet. The Honourable President has indicated he wants to reduce the size of the national cabinet, but with the big scallum, David Mabuza, he can't do that. So the first thing, you must cut the budget by 13.8 billion. The second matter,
don't act as if you like him.
the second matter that we can save money, Honourable Dennis Joseph, is by reducing the number of foreign missions by 69, which could save an estimated 3.9 billion rand over the medium term. We don't need many of these foreign missions because we are second to the United States in having foreign missions. We certainly can save 3.9 billion rand. I'm not so sure. ANC must answer that. I'm not the ANC minister. I'm from the DA, if you haven't noted. Also, Honourable Deputy Speaker, we can also save 17.2 billion rand by withdrawing from the National Development Bank. We can save 17 billion. If we reduce the size of the National Cabinet, we reduce the size of foreign missions, we reduce our impact on the new development bank, we can certainly bring enough money, and 112 billion rand could be saved, and we only get 22.9 billion rand as a result of the 1% VAT increase. The VAT is therefore not necessary. We can save money by having these cost-cutting measures in place. I thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. We move on to the next question, question 3, to the Minister of Economic Opportunities, Mr. Windy. I see you, Mr. Windy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. In the absence of the questioner, the reply: the fourth industrial revolution is not something which can be implemented, but rather a revolution which will irrevocably change the way we do things. Our only option is to maximize the positive trends and minimize the negative impacts. Indeed, the question companies and industries need to face is no longer will I be disrupted, but rather when will my business be disrupted, how will the disruption take place, and how will it affect me and my business. It will probably be those businesses who most effectively succeed in combining the digital, physical, and biological worlds that will be most resilient against disruptive change. To indicate the potential impact we face, it may be a good idea to compare some key elements of the second and third industrial revolution. In 1990, the three biggest companies globally were in Detroit, USA, a prime example of the second revolution manufacturing, and had a combined market capitalization of 36 billion with 1.2 million employees. The three biggest companies in Silicon Valley, USA, now today, in 2014, had a market capitalization of 1.09 trillion, 33 times higher, and 137,000 employees, 9 times lower. Given South Africa's realities and government's objectives, it is clear that the fourth industrial revolution may have a devastating effect on our society. To develop a strategy, we need to understand the underlying drivers of the fourth industrial revolution, its potential impacts on the world as well as on the Western Cape agricultural sector, and we have developed a strategy to face this impact. For this reason, the University of Stellenbosch Business School was commissioned to conduct a diagnostic evaluation on the future of the Western Cape agricultural sector in the context of the fourth industrial revolution. And it was found that some of its current drivers include autonomous vehicles, 3D printing, advanced robotics, new materials, and digital as well as biological developments. While there is a risk that the culmination of these drivers could lead to job losses and failing enterprises, by preparing adequately and embracing the fourth industrial revolution, we could see an agri-renaissance. In this case, the latter, the accelerated adoption of technology, offers exciting new markets and products, new and efficient ways of farming, leading to increased competition amongst producers. The draft report makes a very specific recommendation for government, producers, smallholder and commercial, industrial associations, processors, consumers, as well as scientists. We intend to use this report to inform our work going forward so as to ensure we minimize any risk and capitalize on any advantage for the new trend. This report, which is nearing completion, will be released to the general public within the next couple of months. And Speaker, in addition to this, from the agricultural side, there's also obviously the side driven by my other department, Economic Development and Tourism. And in this space, we have been investing now for quite a long time, from broadband investment to the 2 bandwidth bonds, to the ICANN Centre, to even embracing innovation as a core basic within everything that we do as government, but also at the same time passing that on to the ecosystem and the private sector so that we mitigate these risks, identify how the ecosystem can be taken advantage in this southern tip of Africa. And I believe that that we are stepping up to the plate in this space because of those new tech companies starting in this region, really showcasing what can be done out of this region. I am fairly confident that we are at least in the game, if not ahead of the game.
Thank you. We move on to the next question. Question 4, Honourable Inana to Minister Fritz. Minister Fritz.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I want to thank Honourable Inana for the question. And I want to start off by saying that the crime prevention unit must be read with other units and with other programs in the department, specifically the youth program. So the first one is, in order to ensure the delivery of crime prevention services to children and youth, the Department of Social Development is, in addition to its own services, currently funding MPOs in the province to render crime prevention services in the following areas. We have CASE, which is a very interesting organization working specifically on the psychosocial of young learners in an Overpark and Manenberg crime prevention program at 11 schools with a target of 1,226 learners. Services include a holistic approach in terms of psychosocial services to children in conflict with the law and youth at risk. Then we have NICRO in the Delft area, targeting 120 learners, crime prevention to learners and parents and teachers in those areas. Realistic is in Guguletu, Nyanga and Philippi, a target 120 learners at 5 schools. Life skills crime prevention programs are used as interventions. Then Eliso Care Society in Kailicha, 4 schools, target 330 learners and 220 with interventions of life skills, coaching and mentoring programs. And Kulisa Reintegration Service in Worcester and Paul, target 100 children and parents. Life skills program, mentoring, coaching and aftercare services are all provided. And then Youth Impact and Sustainable Solutions is an organization. Reintegration Services in Overpark, which target 40 learners and 20 parents, skills development and mentoring and aftercare. The second part of the question, in terms of crime prevention strategies and services to children and youth in the Philippi area, the department has embarked on a stakeholder collaboration with CPF, Cluster and Philippi SAPS to keep them informed of services in this area and ensure that intervention services were rendered to all beneficiaries in need. This also ensures that any child-related matters, which would include child protection and children in conflict with the law, receive the necessary attention. In terms of statutory services to children and adults in conflict with the law, for the period of 2017-18, the department successfully diverted 40 children to the diversion programs. In terms of adults, there are 313 successfully completed diversion programs.
Thank you, Honourable Inana.
Deputy Speaker, thank you very much. Minister, the youth are playing a very significant role in contributing to the crime in our country. And my question is, just want to check with you whether is there any relationship that the Department of Social Development in the Western Cape have with the city of Cape Town in order to rehabilitate those youth that are involved in the crime in the area?
Thank you, Honourable Inana, for that question. We have a monthly meeting with the City of Cape Town and their social development unit. And let me just speak to 2 specific programs. Last weekend, we had 120 youth at Blue Waters in Strandfontein in the camp. And those are all preventative programs before young people become involved in crime, to prevent and to tell them about the opportunities that are available. And I want to say thank you to Councillor Alton Jansen, who facilitated that program and really we had full-time social workers at the camp for the whole duration of the weekend to immediately assist with psychosocial interventions. The other program is a very interesting program in the Delft area with the City of Cape Town. The minute a youngster is caught, and I'm not talking about serious crime, and we're talking about the shooters, Deputy Speaker. Those are youngsters who are used now by adults to do the shooting of these gangs in our gang areas. The minute we get them and they are caught by Metro Police, they come to a diverse and a transversal panel, including some of our social workers, that immediately try and see whether we can save this youngster from a life of crime. That program we're going to hope to roll out also to the hotspot of Philippi and Hopeok, that area, but we're now at the moment operating in the Delft area.
Thank you. Honourable Gillian.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Through you to the MEC. I was listening very attentively. MEC, does your province end just over the mountain in Worcester and Paarl from the city of Cape Town? Crime is nie gebonde net aan die city of Cape Town en Poland. What about the other areas, the rural areas? You don't even mention any program in the rural areas. And when we talk about rural areas, and I want to know specifically in areas about rural areas where crime is high.
Thank you, Member. Minister Fritz.
That's a very good question, and the Honourable Member always asks good questions, and she's not as impatient as the so-called leader of the opposition. Deputy Speaker and Honourable Gillian, just last week, and unfortunately when people read papers, perhaps, you know, this stuff actually get into the newspapers. And the newspapers wrote extensively about the intervention program we ran for unemployed youth in the Robertson area. For 30 young people who were on this program, who normally would just go into the kind of divergence of our society, you know, the afwijkings van onze samenleving. They were, and I was so amazed at the brilliance of those young people that week, you know, what we had for a whole long week, and we are now doing the following up of it. We're not like the ANC who come and do causes and then they disappear. Then they run away. They give little pieces of papers that means nothing. We do follow-up so we can get those people into work. And I want to say, that's a very, very important. But also, Deputy Speaker, unlike the ANC, we also believe in sustainable stuff. Not hit and runs, man. Not hit and runs. They're so used to hit and runs because they tick boxes. They tick boxes all the time. And in that regard, throughout the rural areas, and I want to thank the Honourable Member, Gillian, with me, to go to Vredendal, to go to all those areas where we have young people on our program working on farms, farm people, and that's throughout the year, Honourable, and that keeps them out of crime. Unlike your hit and run so-called programs that are jokers.
Order. Honourable Olivier, is there a follow-up question? I'll give you an opportunity.
Through you, Deputy Speaker, MEC, van die jong mense wat op jou program is, hoeveel van hulle is nog skoolgaande ouderdom? And when the diversion takes place, hoeveel van hulle gaan terug skool toe? En meer spesifiek in die rural area wat Member Gillian van vra. Nie metro areas, in die rural, daar aan Kapekal is verste punt of ons van die programme daar het. En so, dankie.
Order.
Dankie.
Order.
Ons moet ook, dat is die makkelijkste vraag. Een belangrijke punt, and I'm going to speak in English so that everyone understands. I think an important question, Mr. Landgrabber, to understand is that when we talk about diversion programs, we talk about a particular category of young people. A diversion program is a program that Honourable Davids, to perhaps understand better, if we talk about crime, specifically in rural areas, when young people commit crime and they're arrested, for them then to be diverted out of the criminal justice system. So we have a child program, and the court approves that kind of alternative sentencing. So that's one area. But I'm talking before the child commits the crime. And that's to me an important part. We're passionate about our young people. In areas like in Vredendal, where young children break into farms, where they break into homes, because they've learned, they've heard, it's better in our child and youth care centers in Klein Willem. Now that we must stop, and we must really empower young people. And so we roll out a whole lot of those programs, focusing, targeting children, the Honourable Oliver, in primary schools and high schools, just to give them hope and a future.
Thank you. Last opportunity, Honourable Inanna.
Deputy Speaker, thank you very much. Thank you, Minister, for the response.
Minister, I just want to check, after the youth have undergone the programs and they got whatever skills that to rehabilitate them, is there a mechanism to monitor their progress after the program? Because we need to provide the program that will break the recidivism syndrome. But what is their available opportunities and assistance after they went through the program?
Thank you. That's in fact a very interesting and important question that I referred to earlier. One of the points we do when people are on our program is to try and align them with the private sector, with job opportunities, or within government. It's no use we talk about opportunities and we don't create opportunities within government. I'm working closely with the Honourable Alan Windy's office and his Department of Economic Development and Economic Opportunities to assist us in placing young people when we have seen that they have the possibility to go into these areas. But when young people are too young and they must go back to school, we also work with the Department of Education, Honourable Oliver, to get them back into school and to, again, get them to finish schooling so that they can have a future. So it's an important point, yeah, because it's 3 days of the World Cup. It's important that we actually do that. And if we have and focus on our children here in the province to give them an opportunity and a life and a future. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you. We move on to the next question. Question 5. Honourable Makaleni to Minister Fritz. Minister Fritz, question 5.
Thank you, Honourable. And in the absence of the Honourable Makaleni, I just want to start off by saying that during the current financial year, this is the 2018-19 financial year, the department will roll out 3 youth cafes and expand the services of the George Youth Cafe to include Uniondale, Honourable Simmers. The B part of the question, the 3 new youth cafes will be in Verliesdorp, Saldanha Bay and Bredasdorp. And next week I'm going to Bredasdorp. I think someone asked me about that. The youth cafe in George will expand the services to youth in the Uniondale area. And the C part of the question, the number of young people who will benefit from these youth development services as follows. Verliesdorp will target 900 young people. Saldanha will target 900 young people. Bredasdorp 950. And the Uniondale area will additional 300 linked to George. So what's interesting about Bredasdorp, Honourable Chairperson, is that there's a centre standing there opened by Blade Zamandi that is standing there and it's not been used. It's a skills centre. You know, when we want to respond to the death of Anim Boyson, then and the centre is called the Anim Boyson Centre. We are going to speak. No, the mayor has no jurisdiction over it. We're going to speak to the National Department to take a partnership with them to also activate that centre as a centre of opportunity and life. Not a dead, beautiful monument that means nothing to the young people. So those are the kind of targets. The D part is the funding for the youth cafes will come from the department allocation for the youth development, but we're also moving far more now to private sector assistance.
Mbagobi.
I just want to ask the Minister, what do you take in consideration in an area when you decide we are going to open a youth cafe? What do you look for and then take a decision that in this area we must open a youth cafe?
It's again a very good question. Normally we try and have a MOU with the local municipality. And when you have an MOU with the local municipality, it's far easier than to get to open a centre. One of the issues, not everywhere, but we're everywhere in control. There's no ANC government anymore in the province.
Order, please. Order.
There is no that I know of. No, I'm serious. I don't know of any ANC government in the province. So one of the points we do is to get a building from them. And then we try and revamp the building and make it possible for access. But it is an important point that we only have so much money, so one will have to prioritize. But the way they come up with a building, we run for it.
Honourable Gopi. My apology. Honourable Gopi, my apology. I saw the Honourable Mackenzie at the back there first, then I'll give you a chance.
Yes. Ahman, Honourable Minister, can you share with us what programs are being shared in these youth cafes? And also, is there consultation with the youth in drawing up these programs?
Thank you, Honourable Mackenzie. The one important point about youth cafes is each one got their own characters. The one in the Nyanga Junction, they got a football, sport kind of flavour. You have the one in Vryfron, you have a very specific job skills type of program where people are trained for that. The one in Oudtshoorn is a very media and IT type of approach because they have a radio station there. The one in George also focuses a lot on IT, but they also focus in George on after-school programs in the surrounding schools. So it's a very interesting. One in Mitchell's played IT, and we are now looking at new contracts in those areas. Same at Vanguard. So each youth cafe has its own character, and the type of programs differ from youth cafe to youth cafe. Normal leadership courses and all of those things are presented, and I think that makes it very interesting.
Thank you. Honourable Gopi.
Minister, does this now mean that in Elsie's River you didn't have a MOU with the municipality? That's why in Elsie's River we have a ICANN center where the youth have to pay to do their copies and things like that. Does that mean you didn't have a MOU with the municipality in Elsie?
We have a MOU with the municipality, but it's an ICANN center. Sorry, what did I say? MOU. Oh, sorry. Okay. Thanks, Mr. Landgrabber, for reminding me. We have with the city. And in fact, the city is now also coming, the city is coming more and more to assist us with, because that's the problem with buildings, to get this infrastructure. And we're actually speaking very well to some of the people in that. But there's as I said, there's an ICANN center. We're not going to buy, because it's very similar, right next to an ICANN center. And you must address that issue if you talk about payment, and we must go look at it. Hey? Yeah.
Thank you. I see Honourable Davids. Honourable Davids.
Thank you, Chairperson. My question to the Minister through you is, as you say, the objective of the youth cafes is to get the youngsters out of trouble. So my question to you, MEC, is, are you working closely with the Justice Department, who have the data of the youngsters that is in trouble, and with the police?
You know, we must also, and Honourable Davidson, I'm saying it now from a very important point, we must also look at good young people, not just young people who catch us on nonsense in our society. We must give everyone an opportunity. And if we get a guy who's trouble, let's deal with him. But don't forget about there are good young people in our society. And let me give you a practical example of an introvert who sat in his room, and then someone told him, have you heard of the youth cafe? And he went. He's today in Spain. He went to Spain, and he's a good boy. He doesn't bother people. But I want to also say, Deputy, former Mayor Davids, I want to say that we work closely with the department, very closely with the Department of Justice. We work very closely with the police around some of those issues. In fact, just last week, the Metro Police did a camp with us. So I'm just making that point. It's important, and I think it's an important question you're asking. We need to work with all young people, not only troubled young people.
Last opportunity, Honourable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Minister, I want to find out from you, what is the relationship, or is there a relationship between you and the private sector with regards to offering some of these services to the youth cafes? In what areas?
Yes, there's some interesting stuff that we are busy working on, specifically Sun International. And I know people have a problem with big capital, but they all live in these hotels. So we, for instance, are slowly guiding and channeling some of our young people into the industry in a broader kind of hospitality sense, coming from these youth cafes. And we have a very, very good relationship with that one. And we are also nurturing with Old Mutual relationship. We're nurturing with Nedbank. We're nurturing with a number of big Sanlam, a number of big companies to see how can...
Minister of Health, Minister Mbombo.
Thank you. Thank you for...
Order.
Thank you for the question. and as the member has indicated that the case has already been referred for the Labour Court, so it becomes sub judice in terms of getting into the merits of it. However, what I can share, it's about the incidences or the phases that led us to where we are, because this is a case of events that happened in 2015, and the dismissal happened around 2016, I think August, and the case is referred to arbitration, which was upheld. So everything, it happened around 2016. For the whole of 2017, there was nothing, dead quiet, until now in March that, for example, it has brought to my attention that the representative, the union representative, has filed the case for the Labour Court. Hence, I can't go deeper in terms of the merit of the case.
Honourable Gopi. Oh, sorry, Gillian, my apologies. Honourable Gillian.
Please, please. Deputy Speaker, let me I just said to the MEC Madikizele when he talked about let's take responsibilities for what is happening in our departments. And I make a joke and I say, please teach your colleague next to you about taking responsibilities for what's happening.
Remember, just get to your question, please.
I'm going there. This thing of these nurses came under my attention during our budget debate. This year.
He just told you now, budget debate.
Budget debate this year. I've raised a question during the budget debate to the MEC. The MEC answered me. Whilst he already knew there's a Labour Court case
Honourable
I'm going there. Why? What is the MEC trying to tell me today in this house? That she can't answer because it's sub judice. It was sub judice already during that time. But let me go there. Let me go to my answer. My question is,
can I just say this is not
what is the MEC going to do?
This is not an example of a supplementary question. A supplementary question must be concise and to the point.
It is to the point, Deputy Speaker. I'm getting
it's becoming to the point now.
I'm getting there.
I'm giving you last chance.
Now my question to the MEC is, this is a classical case of an unfair dismissal because it was procedurally not fair. What will you do to assist these affected nurses, MEC, taking into consideration that you as the MEC must take responsibility for what is happening in your department?
Again, you are saying that it was unfair, meaning that one might interpret as if you are undermining the structures that have been there as according to the Labour Relations Act of 1995, Public Service Act, and also disciplinary code and procedures, because if the bargaining council and also the arbitration has found that actually the processes were fair, then you can't say they were unfair. And after the arbitration, you have got about 6 weeks in terms of now appealing for the recommendations or the final from the arbitration before you could be able even to go to court. So you cannot say it was unfair when it was the arbitrators that were appointed as according to the acts and also as well as the bargaining council. So you can't, because you'll be undermining the other spheres as according to the legislation.
Honourable Gopi, your second question.
Follow up, Honourable Gillian, Deputy.
My apology.
Please,
Honourable Gillian,
please.
your second question.
I'm 52 years wearing this surname. Please don't change it now. Not a husband can change that for me.
Honourable Gillian.
Yes.
Get to the point, please.
Deputy Speaker, now let me go to this. As a woman MEC,
Deputy Speaker.
This is a follow-up question.
Order, member, just 1 second.
Can the honourable member just apply herself to the rules of the House and just ask the question without going on a long meandering trip about a gender, about a personality and everything else?
Thank you, member. Point taken. Order. I want the member now to ask the question, please.
I'm going there. You know, Deputy Speaker. Wat, you know, Deputy Speaker, wat baie betreurenswaardig is wanneer ons die kant van die huis ons werk wil doen en het word so vir 'n joke gevat. My question to the MEC is, as a woman who is responsible for this department, when women are being discriminated against, wearing a jalay, and it's not only now that the MEC het bewus geword hiervan. What did she do as a woman about the discrimination towards other women?
Clear, Minister.
In terms of the law, it doesn't recognize whether you are a woman, you are a human being on that basis. As I indicated, the processes have been followed as according to the Labour Relations Act, has been followed as called to the Public Service Act. So you'll understand that once now they kick in, there are boundaries where you cannot. By the way, at the Department of Health, 32,000 of staff members, almost 80% are women. See, so I don't think that in terms of the gender, but what I'm trying to highlight is that the processes have been followed, and then we have to stick to such. It's the same thing when some people might want to see you, and then you say, because I'm the appeals authority, the law doesn't allow. So as I'm explaining to you, the disciplinary things that happen, and fortunately the two nurses have got a union representative, so they are not alone. It was followed in terms of the disciplinary procedures, the counseling procedures, up to the time of the bargaining council, and then up to the time of the arbitrator, and then it went dead. That was 2016, dead. For the whole of 2017, nothing. Not even a small letter that says, do you remember? Nothing. It came now, early this year, where now one of them filed for the labor court, which is now is where it is. Hence, I'm saying I cannot be able to go into the merit of the case because that's how things are. I have to follow the law, unfortunately.
Honourable Member.
Thank you, Deputy. Thank you for that answer. Respecting the labour processes of this country, MEC, but still, the answer that the MEC gave me during the budget was as follows, that these two nurses, they were not suspended because they were wearing a jalay, but they were suspended because of other reasons. I've got the information, MEC, that your department is misleading you. And I want to ask you, for the fairness in this process, please keep your hand on that pulse. Because the other issue is, when it comes to discrimination...
Order, member, you're going too far. I want a question.
Yes, the question is, you know...
Member, please ask your question.
I will ask the question. My question to the MEC is, for fairness towards this two women that's been discriminated against, are you going to keep your hand on the pulse?
Thank you. Minister?
Sorry, I've already responded.
Thank you. We move on then to the following question. The question number 7 and question number 8 will stand over by arrangement. We come to question number 9. Minister Olivier to Minister Schaefer, Education. Minister Schaefer.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Part 1 of the question. According to our infrastructure department, all schools in the province are regarded as having sufficient ablution facilities based on the regulations related to the minimum norms and standards for public school infrastructure. The second part, I'm not sure what crisis the member is alluding to. There is no sanitation crisis in the Western Cape, as all schools in the province meet the minimum learner-to-toilet ratio based on the regulations related to the minimum norms and standards for public school infrastructure. We do, however, experience a high growth rate of learners enrolling at Western Cape schools, which can at times cause a short-term backlog. These backlogs, if any, are then addressed through the replacement of additional ablutions at the school. For the 2018-19 financial year, 4 ablution projects are being implemented, owing to an increase in enrolments, namely Bridgeville Primary, Elandsfontein Primary, Naasdrift, NGK Primary, and New Ausleben Senior Secondary. Further to this, all new and replacement schools comply with WCED norms and standards for ablutions, as well as national building regulations for ablutions. Any grade R classroom constructed at existing schools includes ablution facilities. In terms of maintenance, the WCED plans to do maintenance at 54 schools during the 2018-19 financial year. All maintenance projects include the renovation of ablution facilities. Thank you.
Honourable Olivier first, then I'll come to McKinney.
MEC, am I correct to assume that the minimum? Am I correct to assume that the minimum required for ablution facilities is 1 to 35 learners? Is that the minimum that you also have? That it's a 1 to 35? Then we rate that as the required number of toilets for learners.
Thank you,
1 toilet to 35. Is that also your understanding or that of the department?
Minister, to respond.
I don't have that figure with me, but I'm assured that whatever the figure is, we comply.
Order. Order. Honourable Mackenzie first, and I'll come back to you.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Can the Minister please share with us?
Order.
Can the Minister please share with us, is there any pit toilets in the Western Cape?
Thank you, Honourable Mackenzie. No, there are not. There are no pit toilets in the Western Cape, despite the fact that DBE reported that there were 4. We checked up on the 4 that were referred to by the DBE. All 4 of those are brand new schools, and there are no pit toilets in the Western Cape.
Honourable Olivier.
Deputy Speaker, taking into account the large numbers of learners that we got this year, which is in schools, and your ratio is 1 to 35, and I can confirm that is 1 to 35. Are you still confirming that that is enough, so you don't have a problem with those? So are you still confirming that we are within the minimum required number of ablution, if you take that into account?
Minister.
This is a repetition of the first question, which I have already answered, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Order. The last opportunity, Honourable Olivier.
MEC, to agree that almost 42% of the samples of schools that were looked at by both the department and 2 other institutions, that about just between 38 and 42% of our schools does have a problem with not enough ablution facilities for their schools?
No.
We move on to the next question. Is question number 10, which will also stand over. We move on to question number 11. Honourable Simmers to Minister Bredell, Minister of Local Government. Minister.
Thank you, and thank you for the question, Honourable Deputy Speaker. During the 2016-17 financial year, the Provincial Strategic Goal 5, Working Group 4, focusing on integrated management, of which the key role players are the Department of Local Government, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning, Provincial Treasury, and the Economic Development Partnership, developed and adopt a provincial top management and Western Cape Municipal Managers Forum an integrated work plan. This plan mapped an approach to integrated provincial and municipal planning, budgeting and governance, to sustainable local government and sustainable development planning. There are 3 main annual engagements identified in the work plan. The first being the strategic conversation followed by the technical engagement, focusing on performance and governance, and the last focusing on sustainable planning and budgeting, traditionally known as the Local Government Medium-Term Expenditure Committee process. Subsequent to the assessment of the draft annual budget, the Municipal Integrated Plan, Development Plans and Spatial Development Frameworks affords the provincial sphere of government an opportunity to strengthen sustainable planning within municipalities. The first of these engagements took place in October 2016, which was strategic in nature to feed into the development of the fourth generation of integrated development plans for 2017 to 2022, and focused on the sustainability of local government within and across districts in an integrated manner. The agenda focused on partnering for economic development, economic and spatial intelligence to inform a sustainable local government and provincial and local government interface. Key lessons and themes emanating from the engagement included, inter alia, the role of political leadership, getting the basics right, the necessity for sustainable planning and budgeting, partnering with importance of data and intelligence and governance. While these are the main points of engagement, there are various other strategic and technical engagements where the themes of sustainable local government is reinforced, such as the Provincial Top Management, Municipal Managers Retreat, Premiers Coordinating Forum, Ministers and Mayors Meeting, and technical meetings. On a technical level, there are also a quarterly Chief Financial Officers and IDP Management Fora, amongst others. The agenda of the fora are crafted to support and further develop and implement the theme of a sustainable local government by reinforcing the message of sustainable local government, and at these engagements, the outputs and impacts of sustainable development planning are being realized. I thank you.
Thank you. No questions? Honourable Simmers, do you want to ask? Order, member.
Let bedaren man, hou op jou plek.
Order.
Hou op jou plek.
Order. Honourable Simmers, if you want to ask a supplementary question, you must stand up in your seat so I can see you.
Om verskoning, ondervoorsitter.
You may proceed. You may ask the question.
Okay. Minister, weer eens, dankie vir u volledige terugvoer en die antwoord op my oorspronklike vraag. Minister, net gekoppel aan die tema van volhoubare ontwikkeling en jy het nou die verskillende forums gelys waar volgens jy weet hierdie fasette van ontpak word deur plaaslike regering, maar een faset en ons het nou in hierdie afgelope paar dae distrikmunisipaliteite besoek. En een van die kernelemente wat die staande komitee van plaaslike regering opgetel het, en ek het hierdie vraag ook aan die distrikte gestel, is die tekort van tegniese vaardighede, onder andere distrikts, dorpsbeplanners en munisipale dorpsbeplanners. Hoe gaan ons dit aanspreek, want volhoubare ontwikkelingsbeplanning benodig bekwame individue, en hierdie is 'n veld veral in plaaslike regering, waar daar werklik waar nasionaal en provinsiaal 'n massiewe tekort van technici is, wat die ondervinding het om dit werk te kan doen.
Achtbare lid, die vraag is duidelik, minister kan antwoord.
Deputy Speaker. Ja, Deputy Speaker en achtbare lid Tertius en die achtbare lid weet dat ek te passief vir hierdie volhoubare ontwikkeling, want dis al hoe ons uit ons armoede gaan kom en dis al hoe ons met ons hulpbronne voor gaan kom. En eintlik wil ek nog 'n woorde aankoppel, want ons praat baie oor en ek soek nog 'n lekker term, maar dis eintlik resilience and sustainability. En hoe ons munisipaliteite daar gaan kry, want distrikmunisipaliteite is in 'n slegte spasie weens hulle equitable share toedeling. Alles begin half daar en op 'n nasionale vlak is ons indringend besig om te kyk na 'n taakgroep wat die finansiële model waarop distrikte moet fungeer, moet uitsorteer. Nou, dis jammer dat ons dit nog nie gedoen het nie, want die probleme waarmee die distrik tans sit, kan regtig nie net op hulle afgeskei word nie. Hulle trek aan die kortste entjie. Ons het in plaaslike regering 'n groot dryf gekry om gedeelde dienste in distrikte te begin vestig en ons het 'n paar goeie voorbeelde, ek dink is veral in jou area in die Sentraal Karoo en daardie areas waar ons ekspertise deel met die munisipaliteite, regsadviseurs ensovoorts. Een ding wat uitgekom het met die water en die waterkrisis was dat die regering het in rondom 2000 na 2004 250 ingenieurs in die departement gehad, waar ons sit vandag met 80 ingenieurs. En as regering, en ek praat van alle regeringssfere, sal ons moet besef, as ons nie gaan terugploeg en herbelê in tegniese vaardighede nie, gaan ons nie ons armoede uit die weg ruim nie. En as ek dit bedoel, sal ons regtig 'n ander tipe denke moet kry oor ons beurskemas. Ons sal regtig beurse daar moet stel om plattelandse kinders te kry wat die vermoë het om 'n tegniese ingenieur te word of 'n finansiële CFO en sit daardie kind in universiteit want hy sal teruggaan huis toe en hy ken sy omstandighede of haar omstandighede en jy moet eintlik 'n siklus begin ontwikkel waar jy dit elke tweede jaar doen sodat as daardie kind goed doen, weet ons almal die private sektor gaan die kind opneem. En ek is 'n groot voorstander dat ons werklik sal moet terugploeg in belê in ons beurskemas want dit is al hoe ons daardie kapasiteit daar gaan bou.
Agbare Janji.
Baie dankie LR vir daai eerste poging van u. It was baie goed. Now here is the question on this sustainability. Can any municipality be sustainable? And I'm going back to Central Karoo, like Beaufort West. Waar daar 3 in 1 is. In other words, I'm saying there's 3 in 1. You have somebody who's acting as an MM, one person, who's acting as a CFO, same person, who's acting as a head technical in the same municipality. 3 and 1. Can you hope for any sustainability in that municipality when you have that situation? And it's a specific one, it's not just a thumbs up.
Minister?
Let me try. I don't know what the honourable member is talking about.
Order.
I don't understand the. Honourable Chairperson, if we want to enter the political discussion, we can enter the political discussion. You must be very careful when you start throwing mud if you're in the mud pool yourselves, you know. So it's very simple. We all know it, that stability within a municipality leads to success. We all know it. Where your ANC govern, it's only an unstable environment.
Order. Allow the minister to respond, please. Minister.
I can't answer if they, I mean, you asked the question, let me answer. There's no such thing as run out of ideas. That's why you've got an organigram in a municipality. One person can't do it all. It's as simple as that. But the ANC is in the middle of that problem.
Order. Honourable Janki.
The first part of the question, can small municipalities be successful? Yes, they can. It's nothing to do with the size of the municipality. That you must have specialists within each directorate, obviously you need that. Obviously it's an unhealthy situation what's going on in some of our municipalities. We're not ideal, but that instability is caused by the ANC. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Honourable Beerwinkel.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. MEC, as much as you're trying to explain that without the technical expertise, a municipality cannot be sustainable. However, for a municipality to be sustainable, what are you doing to ensure that those officials that you're putting in place are seeing to it that the IDP processes which influence the sustainable development of a municipality are real meetings with the community to influence the IDP? That is the development, the sustainable development plan comes from the IDP.
Thank you, Member.
What are you doing to ensure that?
Well, Honourable Speaker, Deputy Speaker, the ANC must really also touch base with their national colleagues, because they come and see me and ask me to explain our IDP process, because they use it as a best practice. Because we pull everything in, and obviously that's the core and that's where it must start. Obviously, there's a bigger problem that Honourable Beerwinkel is pointing towards. I don't have a problem with our processes and the systems in place. The problem starts off with our ward committees not getting the community out to come and participate within the IDP. I think that's a bigger issue currently, and we need to address that, and we're busy addressing that. Through various media, we're busy with DVDs, how the role of the ward committees, we're busy with all sorts of training. And you know, Honourable Speaker, if you look at the independent rating like Ratings Africa, and I want to ask the members, go and read it. The Western Cape stands out head and shoulders above all other provinces.
Order.
So, and it speaks to our quality. But, Honourable Speaker, it will be a lie to stand here and say everything is honky-dory and fine. We're head and shoulders above all the rest, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. We acknowledge that. Thank you.
We move on to the next question, which is question 12. Honourable Secretary to Minister Marikizela. Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. There are no open market rental opportunities for retail, commercial and business purposes. The retail commercial component that formed part of the initial Bela CBD has been excluded as a result of unmet contractual obligations by the previous contractor. My department made the portion of the site that was designated for that purpose available to the Department of Health for the development of 550-bed Tygerberg Regional Hospital that will include a community daycare center and emergency medical services. A retail component including spa and various other chain stores has been developed on a privately owned land closer to that project site. The development of commercial activity is in close proximity of the Bela CBD, addresses not only the need for access to job opportunities, but also access with minimal traveling distance. The appointed developer, through the City of Cape Town's employment database and engagements with the community, has provided employment to a number of members of the local community. More employment will be made available to various artisans, for which preference is given to the local community as the project progresses and various development phases are unlocked. The planned hospital site will provide 1,085 employment opportunities to qualified medical professionals. In terms of the Bela funding, which is part of the question, Human Settlement Development Grant is 300 million rand has been allocated to subsidies for the following program. 120 million rand is for 600 BNG, 77 million rand is for 630 social housing units, 50 million is for 1,000 finance-linked individual subsidy program, and 18.4 million is for 102 military veterans units. Urban Settlement Development Grant, the City of Cape Town, as I said to the previous question, has approved 127 million of the 275 million that were requested. So we do have some funding shortfall there. And in addition, the city also approved the 58 million rands for the electrification of the area to cover the shortfall of the 126 million rand total requirement, of which the Department of Energy was only able to give us 68 million rands. So Social Housing Regulatory Authority, or SHRA, 79 million rands for 630 social housing units was made available by SHRA. And the Department of Energy made 68 million rands for the electrification of the wider area. And the developer made available 969 million on internal infrastructure and top structure funding. I thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. Honourable David first, and then I'll see Mr. Seku.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Minister, as you said, as you answered in the previous question, you also touched base on this question. So my question to you, Minister, if we are saying that the city has given 58 million rand, okay, now I'm speaking about the electricity. They gave 58 million rand for the electricity, but I will come back, Minister, to the report of the city where they said they didn't spend that money. What influence does it have on this project?
Minister.
Well, it's critical because for a project, especially of that magnitude, to be considered complete, in fact, AG is very strict on that, as you know, Honourable Member. We can play our role as department and do everything that we need to do. In fact, I have a situation now where some of the houses, because water connections took a very long time from the city, could not be signed off as complete, even though we did our work. So to answer your question, it has a major impact, because unfortunately they cannot be signed off as completed houses if electrification is not done. So that is a response, a direct response to your question.
Honourable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Minister, it's really assuring to hear that the partnerships that are happening in this project, it's including the small businesses. But from that, what I want to find out, is there any HDIs in those construction companies or the subcontractors that are there, and is there the youth representation or the women representations in those SMEs that are there?
Now, if you remember the response that I gave during the interpellation, Member Maseko, is that one of the reasons why we have experienced delays in that project is because the forums that straddle from both wards fought for that. In fact, it's also one of the things that we are fighting for as a department. And that is why, as you might be aware, that we pride ourselves that out of our total budget of 2.5 billion rands currently in this financial year, more than 50% of that budget, because we're not just talking about the number of HDIs who are working with us, we're talking about the total allocation of the budget that goes to HDI. In fact, in the last financial year was 52%. And we are striving to increase it. Therefore, in each and every project that we do, it is a prerequisite from our side that HDI's contractors must be involved in those sites.
Thank you. Honourable David.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Through you to the Minister. Minister, you said in your previous response about the retail, you said that they are excluded because of contractual issues by the previous contractor, and that there is a space for them, but it's private-owned land. I want to know, how is it going to affect the local retail people and businesses within that community?
In fact, we are very happy about that particular development, Member David, because it fits in perfectly with our concept of integrated human settlement development. And that is why, even though we excluded it from our own development, which was part of it before, the fact that it is happening adjacent to that development, it also is assisting. Because what you are seeing in Bela CBD is a truly a development that ticks every box in terms of integrated human settlement development. And that is why also we're very happy to partner with another sister department like Department of Health. We are now in conversation with the University, for example, of Western Cape, because they also need a student accommodation within that development. So you have all the components that tick all the boxes in terms of making sure that that development is truly an integrated, development. So as I said, because those people who will be living there will be walking to work because of the development of SPA and other retail components that are happening, stone throw away from that particular development.
Thank you, Honourable Maseko. The last opportunity, then we've exhausted this.
Okay. Thank you very much. Minister, I just want to find out lastly, if there is a monitoring of the transfer of skills from the already developed construction companies to the emerging construction companies within the project in its totality.
Well, perhaps let me just tell you what we are doing as the department, because the truth is you can't just rely on the captains of industry to transfer the skills to people who must in turn compete with them. I mean, you can't rely on that. What we are doing as a department to make sure that we truly empower the HDIs, we have developed what is currently known as framework contract, where we invite all the emerging contractors to register in that framework. They get allocated umsebenzi based on their levels in terms of CIDP, in terms of their CIDP grading, and the more work you give to them, the more their level, increases in terms of their grading. Now, as I'm talking to you now, there are people that we took from level 2. They are now on level 7. Because if you give a level 2 50 units and that person does umsebenzi ngendlela right, the next time you are able to increase the amount of work up to a point now where we have HDIs that can compete with the captains of industry. And that is what we are doing in that department. In fact, if you look at the best performers, I mean, I'm without necessarily casting aspersions to the captains of industry, if you look at the best performers now for that particular department are HDIs. And so we are very proud with that particular process that we have followed. So we are truly empowering them, not necessarily just relying on the captains of industry to subcontract under them so that the skills transfer. We also give them umsebenzi. We appoint our own service providers that can monitor and make sure that the issue of the building regulations that must be adhered to is there, and in that way you are able to grow your own timber consistently and gradually.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of question time. The time has expired. The outstanding replies will be printed in Hansard. We move on to statements by members. I will first see the DA. Honourable Joseph.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The National Energy Regulator of South Africa, NERSA, is currently conducting public hearings as part of Eskom's proposed tariff increase to make up for the 66.6 billion deficit. The proposed tariff increase is a slap in the face of the poor and the municipalities who have to foot the bill for rampant corruption that has plagued Eskom over past years. The effects of Jacob Zuma's legacy of corruption and the severe mismanagement of South African state-owned entities is only now coming to surface with the public rather than the politicians being held accountable. Energy experts have also said that corruption at Eskom, including the state-owned entities dealing with the Guptas, is the reason behind the current coal shortage, which threatens further load shedding for the coming winter. The Gupta-owned business, the Geta, which received tenders for coal supply, has now been declared bankrupt. Once again, we see state corruption through tenderpreneurs that has driven the state-owned entities to the brink of collapse. Once again, the people are paying more for electricity when it is routinely cut through load shedding. It is the South African public. Once again, we are forced to pay the cost of corruption. The ANC continues to abet. So desperate is Eskom to make its losses that it has finally ordered ex-CEO Brian Molefe to pay back 1 million rand of this undue 30 million rand pension payout. He should be paying back the full amount with interest. We see the legacy of the rampant state corruption and the ANC continues to plague the lives of South African taxpayers. But the damage he has caused to our country will take yet another decade to fix. We need to remove the ANC, the very government responsible for this damage to our country, out of power. Once out for all, the ANC must go. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Order, I see the ANC. Honourable Dugmore.
Thank you. As the ANC, we welcome the proposals contained in the report into the Philippine horticultural area, which was presented to the Standing Committee on Agriculture yesterday. We look forward to receiving the full report on Monday, the 23rd of April, as promised by the department. From what we have seen, the study is technically excellent, and it is good to see the value of the PHA captured in an up-to-date document. The call for full protection of the PHA is welcomed. However, it is very clear to us that the struggle to preserve the full PHA and all the land zoned for agriculture, as well as the invaluable aquifer, is far from over. As the ANC, we salute all the activists in the PHA campaign who have led a 10-year campaign, not only to safeguard the PHA, but for making clear proposals for the empowerment of small black farmers, African and coloured men and women, by placing them on this land, which will result in sustainable livelihoods and job creation. There are red lights that are flashing, which could once again wreck an excellent report. The main threat is the ongoing chronic factional and ideological differences that plague the DA and impact negatively on service delivery in general, and in this case, the preservation of the PHA as the food basket of Cape Town. While the report is clear that policy certainty and a common vision among all spheres of government is critical, there are stark differences and conflict within the DA. As of today, neither the Provincial Cabinet nor MACO have formally endorsed this report. While the MEC for Agriculture's public statement of support is welcome, it means nothing when we consider that MEC Bradell, along with the City of Cape Town, is opposing the PHA campaign's High Court case to review development permissions to save the PHA. These development applications threaten at least 1/3 of the PHA. We would have expected the report to make a clear recommendation that MEC Bradell withdraws his opposition to the PHA campaign in the High Court application. Crucial to the existence of the PHA is the aquifer. Its primary recharge zone is the southern third of the PHA, and it is this specific area which the city has given up for developments. Province and the City of Cape Town have granted full development rights to both Oakland City and UVS, which will pave over the primary recharge zone in the Cape Flats aquifer. The DA was told about this, yet they added to the water crisis by ignoring proposals to preserve the aquifer. The DA's last sentence, the DA's internal divisions and propensity to support development at all costs has added to the crisis precipitated by the drought.
Thank you. I see the DA, Honourable Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the social ills of society begin when we do not give underprivileged young people an opportunity to escape their circumstances. In the Western Cape, young people continue to be at risk of drugs, gangsterism, and a life of crime. It is only through dedicated social development initiatives and an opportunity-rich society through sound governance that young people are afforded a chance at a life they value. The DA-led Western Cape government is fully aware of the realities in which our young people live. This is why our government is fully committed to youth development. The Department of Cultural Affairs and Sports' after-school game changer gives children an opportunity to capitalize on their artistic and sporting talent after school, instead of spending time on the streets. Our Department of Social Development has youth cafes in underprivileged communities in our province. Here, underprivileged and rural teens are provided with counseling and mentoring, skills development, and internet access for greater learning. Our Department of Community Safety's Chrysalis Academy provides rehabilitation for youth vulnerable to the effects of crime and poverty. The opportunity to participate in a program which focuses on the individual's physical, psychological, and spiritual development, resulting in realistic, sustainable, and life-changing results. Furthermore, the Department of the Premier's Advancement of Youth Project provides qualifying matriculants an opportunity to intern within the public sector, gaining marketable skills for their CVs, work experience, networking, and a chance to fine-tune their career prospects. It is very clear, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that this DA-led Western Cape government has taken an interministerial and a committed approach to advancing and catering for our youth at risk. I thank you.
Thank you. In the absence of the EFF, I see the DA again.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I do welcome the Commission of Conciliation, Mediation, Arbitration, CCMA, which is acting as intermediary for the bus strike which began on Wednesday, 18th of April 2018, yesterday. It is deeply concerning that the South African Transport and Allied Workers Union, SATAU, and the South African Road Passenger Bargaining Council announced an indefinite strike as it has a direct effect on commuters throughout the province. Deputy Speaker, as the DA, we urge all the stakeholders to find the middle ground in this negotiation process in order to find the in order to make the formal and normal resumption of the services to prevail. The union has proposed a 1-year 12% across the board wage increment with the minimum basic wage of 8,000, while the employers have offered a 3-year agreement with the 7% for the first year, 25% for 2019, and 7.5% for 2020. Deputy Speaker, the strike cost the province an estimated 10 million rand a day and puts financial strain on commuters who must resort to more inconvenient and expensive forms of alternative transport. I therefore, Deputy Speaker, call on all unions and employers and relevant stakeholders to immediately reach an agreement and avoid any prolonging of the strike action. Buses must, as soon as possible, resume their services, as commuters can no longer rely on metro services. In the city of Cape Town, Deputy Speaker, metro rail passengers have dropped by roughly 50% from over 675,000 passengers in 2000 to an estimated 360 passengers in 2017. These, Deputy Speaker, train cancellation in the Western Cape have also increased from 3% in 2015 to 15% in 2017. The DA in the Western Cape is committed to ensuring that the residents have safe and reliable transport services, enabling employment, educational and economic opportunities. I thank you.
Thank you, Member. Your time has also expired. I see the ANC. Honourable Gillian.
Deputy Speaker, the stream of complaints against the DA-run government secrecy and health care failures grows, and yet the DA keep its ostrich head in the sand. The present spat between the Provincial Department of Health and oversight by the National Council of Provinces, led by Western Cape Legislature Permanent Delegate Dumisani Kimbi, showed up the DA. What does the DA have to hide? Everyday newspapers splash horrific stories of bad service at provincial health facilities. Yet, the DA hides the facts and figures from proper constitutional oversight. Not even the so-called complaints mechanisms reports are shared with the legislature for scrutiny to assess whether the budget is adequate to address challenges. It is hidden in the back rooms. But the DA manipulation does not stop there. Community members tell us the DA is busy with election trickery as it loads health facility forums with DA MPLs and members. This is to silence community inputs and to hide the truth and real pictures. The DA culture of secrecy is not conducive for good and transparent democracy. In the case of the Maritzburg Hospital, a question was raised in the budget period to the MEC and HOD. They gave us the assurance that Maritzburg Hospital is not closing. Yet today, members of Maritzburg is telling us, community members of Maritzburg is telling us that the hospital is indeed closing.
Order.
And that the community of Maritzburg must from now on use the hospital in Beaufort West.
Thank you, Member. Your time has expired.
Thank you, but the secrecy of this department is not conducive for this democracy.
I see the DA. Honourable Kivedu.
Deputy Speaker, thank you. Infrastructure investment and the maintenance of existing infrastructure is critical for promoting job creation, broadening the economic base and raising growth potential. unlocking economic opportunities and addressing socio-economic needs and challenges. On the Deputy Speaker, Tata Bandiba once said, and I quote him, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world," unquote. These words, although spoken years ago, remain true unto this very day. Therefore, Deputy Speaker, in order to provide quality education, one would logically assume that this requires appropriate infrastructure that contributes to a dynamic learning environment. Agbare Speaker, die DEA-begeleide Wes-Kaapse regering erkende dat deur op 'n pragmatiese wyse uitvoering hieraan te gee, onder andere infrastruktuurverbeterings by skole, dit op sigself fasiliteer doeltreffender toegang tot skole, sowel as verbeterde leeruitkomste. Speaker, this year we saw an additional 25,000 learners enter the province without additional funding from National Treasury. This has resulted in the WCD having less funding available to allocate to the building of new schools as well as maintenance of existing schools. However, this has not stopped the DA-led Western Cape government to continue its efforts in ensuring that the learners of this province receive not only a quality education but in an environment conducive learning environment. Ter opsomming as gevolg van tyd, 531 miljoen rand word toebedeel aan die DEA vir die boekjaar om infrastruktuurverbetering aan te bring by skole in terme van bou van nuwe skole. Daar gaan 7 hierdie jaar kom en ook die vervanging van uitgediende skole waarvan 3 verwesenlik gaan word hierdie jaar. Dit sal ook lei tot 'n kwalitatiewe verbetering ook in terme van leeruitkomste en ook die leerders die geleentheid gee om in 'n lewensvatbare leeromgewing te leer. Ek wil net sê ten slotte, the proof of the pudding lies in the eating. And where the DA is in government, no child is left behind. Aish. Thank you.
Tyd is verstreke. In the absence of the ACDP, I see the ANC. Honourable Beerwinkel.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, MEC Wendy earlier referred to a song by Michael Jackson which said, "They don't care about us." The DA, as usual, has selectively quoted. I suggest that they read that poem, or rather the words of that song, and be educated. I also want to tell you who really cares about the people. It certainly isn't the DA. If the municipality is unstable, we've just heard, there will be no success. Let me tell you, what a tangled web we weave is so true of the DA mess, hogging the newspapers every day. It's Patricia de Lille pitted against her very own leaders, against FedEx, against her caucus, and the lengths you are going to get rid of a strong woman who dared to speak up against injustice in the ranks of the DA. The latest on the list of her sins is her letter addressed to the MACO members, not the press, the MACO members, asking for urgent intervention, raising the fact that it's the worst capital project underspent in the city of Cape Town in years. Yet the city hikes service charges by almost 30% to enhance the capital budget in the next financial year, while the finance available is not spent. As the mayor, she's raising concerns over the huge underspend in the city on capital budget, the greatest being the unallocated amounts on water-related services, such as desalination and tapping into aquifers. Also, the electrification program for backyarders has a 71% underspend.
Who cares about who?
Right. There are more than 50 examples of underspending, almost to the amount of 2 billion rand. We are often subjected here to grandstanding by the DA on how they are allocated additional funding due to underspending elsewhere. But now, because of their double standards, their silence on the City of Cape Town's capital underspend screams in its silence. The DA Finance MEC The DA Finance MEC has reneged on his oversight role over municipal spending to allow such shocking underspend, especially on water-related projects, while people are queuing on a daily basis for their basic right. Last sentence.
Yes.
The DA wanted a disaster declared. The real disaster is the DA uncoordinated planning and spending to alleviate the drought.
Thank you, member. Your time has expired. The last one is for the DA again. Honourable Max.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I commend the Provincial Department of Cultural Affairs and Sport for their commitment to ensuring that Indigenous games are not lost so that current and future generations of children can enjoy playing them too. Such games include Dibeke, Koko, Ntimo, Diketu, Jukske, Nkuvu, Morabaraba, and Tonga. The games are practiced at the community level through Indigenous game structures in the different Western Cape districts. In 2017, there were 1,723 district participants. This total includes the Cape Highlands with 301 participants, the Karoo Central with 223 participants, Eden with 303 participants, Metropole with 397 participants, Overberg with 234 participants, and the West Coast with 265 participants. The department further ensures that Indigenous games are promoted at its 20 recreation centres across the province. Last year, Deputy Speaker, trials were held to select participants to perform on behalf of the province, and over 300 players were invited from the various districts. This year, on the 21st of July 2018, each district will have a full team per game, totaling 700 participants. Now, Deputy Speaker, this DA in the Western Cape is committed to the revival and sustenance of Indigenous culture and heritage is further demonstrated by the public hearings underway, allowing public participation on the Traditional and Khoisan Leadership Bill 2015. The bill makes provision for the recognition of Khoisan and their leaders. I thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of statements. We move further down the order paper, draft resolution and order paper, standing in the name of Honourable Wenger. I see the member.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I move the motion in my name on the order paper.
Thank you. Any objection to the motion being agreed to? No objection. Agreed to. I see the Chief Whip.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I hope I also get a round of applause. I move the motion in my name on the order paper. Thank you.
No objection. I sense there's no objection to that one. No objection. Agreed to. Honourable Yankee.
Cosmetic change. I mean, they can't even have a children's commissioner, environment commission. They want to.
Honourable Yankee, please.
To be
You're off target now. We will continue with motions. Are there any motions where notice is given? Honourable Botha.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. A motion with notice that this House debates the successes of the public health system in the Western Cape versus the failures in other provinces. I so move. Sorry.
Notice is taken of that. Any further? Any further? Honourable Kim McKenzie.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move with notice that the House debates the inadequacy of the provincial equitable share formula to respond to the needs of education and the unfairness of the national quintile policy.
Notice is taken. Honourable Lekker. Honourable Janki.
Sekela Somlomo. I move that the House debates the poor state and shortage of CCTV cameras in the Cape Flats under the DA to assist in the fight against crime. I so move.
Thank you. Notice taken. Honourable Gillian. Honourable Gillian, you may proceed.
Deputy Speaker, I move with notice that the House debates the challenges experienced at Khayelitsha District Hospital under the DA administration and the unacceptable level of services delivered to this community.
Notice is taken. Any further? Honourable Gopi.
Deputy Speaker, I move with notice that the House debate the urgent need for the appointment of a Children's Commissioner. I so move.
Notice is taken. Honourable Lekker.
I move that the House debates.
Order. Honourable Lekker, just to pull the microphone closer.
I move that the House debates the escalation of gang violence in the province.
Thank you. Notice is taken of that. Are there any further for the last time? Honourable Joseph, are you standing up to move?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move that this House debates the housing needs in the Western Cape relating to budget allocation, housing waiting list, and backyard dwellers. I so move. Thank you.
Notice is taken of that. We then move to the, if there's no further here, then we move to the next one where motions is given without notice. Honourable Simmer.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that this House congratulates Sydney Michaels, aged 7 years old. She's a grade 2 pupil from Pakkelsdorp in George who was awarded the South African colours in chess during the past school holidays. I so move.
No objection to the motion being moved without notice. No objection to the motion itself. Motion is agreed to. Honourable Gopi.
Motion with notice that the House...
Without notice.
Oh, motion without notice, sorry. That the House note with sadness the passing on of Bishop V. Vimtini, one of the longest serving ministers of the National Baptist Church of South Africa, who was ordained as in 1981 at Mbekweni Pal in the Western Cape. Note further that Bishop Umtini was the first chaplain of the ANC in the Western Cape and conveys our condolences to his family and friends and comrades. I so move.
Thank you. No objection to the motion being moved without notice. No objection to the motion itself. Agreed to. Honourable Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I move without notice excuse me, that the House welcomes the opening of the Western Cape Social Development Department's 45th local office in Beaufort West yesterday, and further that we congratulate Western Cape Social Development Minister Albert Fritz for his persistent efforts to grow a network of local offices which bring social work services and innovative services such as the child play therapy rooms closer to our poorer communities. I so move.
There's an objection. Order will be printed in the order paper, and we stay in the Karoo. We stay in Beaufort West. I see the Honourable Diana.
Please. Motion without notice. I move that the House notes with sadness that long-standing Western Cape ANC members passed on during the month of April and conveys condolences to the families of comrades Uyang Wayo Kuta and Christine Julius. I so move.
No objection to the motion being moved without notice. No objection to the motion itself. Agreed to. Honourable Kividu.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move that the House congratulate Mr. Wayne Naidu, our Sergeant of Arms at the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, for being elected as chairperson of the school governing body of Bernardino Heights High School in Kraaifontein. May he deliver the same high standards in his new incumbency as he does at Parliament. I so move. Thank you.
I take it there's no objection to the motion being moved without notice, nor objection to the motion itself. Motion is agreed to. Honourable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I move without notice that the House congratulates the 25 unemployed young people from Robertson and surrounding communities who completed the Youth Entrepreneurship Workshop. This workshop was hosted by the Department of Social Development in conjunction with the Langeberg Municipality. Further, that we congratulate Western Cape Social Development Minister Albert Fritz for his unwavering commitment to youth development. I so move.
Any objection to the motion being moved? Is there objection? There's an objection. Will be printed in the order paper. Honourable Lekker.
That the House...
Order.
That the House notes the matter of Police Officer Constable Ncedo Katoyi after he and his partner were ambushed by a gang of armed men when they were responding to a call to deal with an alleged assault incident in Sightsee last week. Notes and condemns the DA-led administration in the city and the province for the poor state of CCTV cameras, which makes it difficult for the police to identify the culprits. Calls on SAPS to speed up investigations so that they can bring perpetrators to book, and conveys condolences to his family, friends, and colleagues. I thank you.
Any objection to the motion being moved? Are there objections? But Honourable Joseph, is that an objection? Objection recorded, will be printed in the order paper. I see Honourable Simmers.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I move it without notice that this House notes the delay in the signing of the IPPs by National Minister Jeffrey Adebe, which would have been an opportunity to save the public from the looming electricity crisis. That this House further notes that we must condemn the mismanagement and irresponsible process management by the national government of this opportunity. I so move.
Any objection? There's an objection. Will be recorded. Honourable Botha.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. Our Speaker, I move without notice that the House congratulates the 8 community workers who will graduate next week, Monday, from the UWC Substance Abuse Graduation Program. Further, that we congratulate the Western Cape Social Development Department under the leadership of Minister Albert Fritz, which has shown a real commitment to expanding the resources available to poor communities to tackle drug and alcohol addiction. Since 2009, services for the treating substance abuse have risen from 7 drug treatment centres under the previous ANC government to this DA government funding 36 NGOs working at 51 drug and alcohol treatment sites across the province. This is progress, and we thank Minister Fritz for his leadership in this regard. I so move.
Order. There is an objection. Can I just point out, Honourable Botha, that the wording, the format is a little bit problematic, but I will accept it for this opportunity. Honourable Janki?
I've already objected. That the House notes and welcomes the move by Capetonians who have asked the public protector to investigate the DA-run City Council's proposed 27 water and sanitation tariff hikes, and condemns the unreasonable increase of basic services in the city of Cape Town under the DA. You can object.
Order. Are there any objections to that? There are objections. Will be printed in the order paper. Honourable Joseph.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move that this House sends condolences to the Van Lingen family due to the passing of Elsa Van Lingen, Mayor of Kucha Municipality in the Eastern Cape Province. Elsa Van Lingen served as DA leader in the NCOP from 2009 to 2016. Her contribution in various positions, building a democratic and accountable state, will surely be missed. I so move.
Thank you. I take it there's no objection to the motion being moved without notice, no objection to the motion itself. Agreed to. Honourable Olivier first.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move that this House note with concern that the WCD continues to ignore the crisis of safety in schools while incidents of violence attack on teachers and learners are increasing. Note further that last 2 weeks incident occurred where a Sultana teacher was shot dead and a boy at Mannenberg School was stabbed on school grounds, and calls on the national government to come and assist the provincial government. I so move.
Are there objections? I sense there's an objection. Will be printed on the order paper. Order. Honourable Mackenzie first.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Order.
I move without notice that the House congratulates the residents of Mitchell's Plain, the British Consul General in Cape Town, Edward Roman, and his team, as well as Mother Earth, Irene Mazoras, for participating in a beach clean-up in Monabisi Beach on Saturday, the 14th of April, in preparation for the World Clean-up Day on the 15th of September, and urge residents of Mitchells Plain to continue to work with government and to keep our communities and our environment clean. I so move.
No objection to the motion being moved without notice. No objection to the motion itself. Agreed to. Honourable Lekker.
That the House notes with concern that families who fear for their lives in Marikana informal settlement in Philippi have started to move out of the area following the spike in violence which resulted in the death of a man who was shot last weekend. Notes further that the patrolling equipment which was promised to the community members last year has not yet been delivered by the Office of MEC Plateau and his department, and calls for the swift action from all relevant authorities to combat violence in the area. I so move.
Any objection to the motion being moved? Is there objection? There is no objection. The motion will be printed in the order paper. Honourable Kividu.
Good. I move that the House congratulate Mr. Anwar Barnes, our administrative clerk at the Western Cape Provincial Parliament.
Order. Order.
I'll start from the beginning. Good. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move that this House congratulate Mr. Anwar Barnes, our administrative clerk at the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, for being elected as chairperson of the school governing body of Norwood Primary School in Mitchells Plain. May he deliver the same high standards in his new incumbency as he does at Parliament. I so move. Thank you.
No objection to the motion being moved without notice. No objection to the motion itself. Agreed to. Honourable Gillian, correct name, you may know.
Those are your comrades. Those are your comrades. Good.
Deputy Speaker, I move without notice that the House notes with concern the DA's support of racists in the province, as confirmed by the Education MEC, who refused to cancel a Steve Hofmeyer concert at Overberg Primary School, despite a public outcry. Notes further that the MEC said she supports the freedom of speech right and that she condemns the DA for its support of racists. I so move.
There's no objection to that. The motion will be printed in the order paper. Are there any further? Honourable Davids.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Motion without notice that the House notes and condemns the report by the city which shows that between January last year and February this year, its anti-land invasion unit office demolished more than 6,600 informal dwellings, noted further that a high number of illegal land grabs and increasing numbers of people in informal settlements in the province shows the inability of the DA government to build people houses and expose the failures of the backyard programs, and further calls on the DA government to prioritize building proper homes for the poor.
Any objection to the motion being moved without notice? Are there objections? Motion will be printed in the order paper. Honourable Mackenzie.
Deputy Speaker, I move without notice that the House commends FedEx South Africa and its Managing Director, Mr. Andre Bessler, in conjunction with Oasis Reach for Dream Foundation in Mitchells Plain, for the launch of the Field in a Box soccer field that caters for the communities of Philippi and Mitchells Plain. Furthermore, urges more corporates, through their corporate social responsibility, to follow the example by FedEx South Africa and invest in social development of underprivileged communities in the Cape Flats. I so move.
No objection to that motion being moved. Is there an objection? That motion will be printed on the order paper. I see the Honourable Diana.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Order.
Motion without notice. I move that the House notes with concern that collective water consumption in Cape Town remains way above the required daily target of 450 million litres. Notes further that the average dam levels across the province continues to drop and calls on the national government to further intervene to prevent a greater crisis. I so move.
Any objection to the motion being moved without notice? No objection to the motion itself. Agreed to. Honourable Chief Whip.
Deputy Speaker, that the House congratulate Fisher Surf Life-Saving Club for winning the overall National Club Championship title at the recent National Championships held in Port Elizabeth.
I take it there's no objection to the motion being moved without notice. No objection to the motion itself. Agreed to. Honourable Lekker. Order. Order, Member Lekker.
That the House notes and welcomes the launch of a probe by IPIT after a Metro Police officer allegedly shot dead a man and wounded 2 others at Mfuleni Police Station over the weekend after the officer was allegedly stabbed, and calls on IPIT to speed up the investigation. I so move.
No objection to that motion being moved without notice. No objection to the motion itself. Agreed to. Honourable Gillian.
Deputy Speaker, I move without notice that the House notes that the confirmed cases of listeriosis nationally have risen to over 1,000 and the death toll has increased to 193. Notes further that the Western Cape accounts for the 2nd highest number of confirmed cases and calls on the Provincial Health Department to coordinate the containment of the outbreak and run more intense awareness programs. I so move.
Any objection to the motion being moved without notice? Any objection to the motion being moved without notice? Is there an objection? Will be printed in the order paper. Honourable Magaka. Order. Order. Honourable Magaka, you may proceed.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move that the House notes and commend UCT for its decision to rename the new Science Lecture Theatre the Christiani Lecture Theatre in honor of the late ANC statuette, the SACP General Secretary, and Umkhonto is the Chief of Staff, who was assassinated 25 years ago. I so move.
Any objection to the motion being moved without notice? No objection to the motion itself. Agreed to. Honourable Gopi. Honourable Janji, please.
Motion without notice that the House notes that the Rivonia trialist Dennis Goulberg turned 85 on April 11. Notes further that for this year's birthday he held a concert to raise funds for a multi-million rand house.
Order, members, you're interfering with your own member.
Further notes that this year's birthday he held a concert to raise funds for a multi-million rand House of Hope Center, which will provide music lessons, performing art, life language skills, congratulates him and wishes him well, raising funds for his noble cause.
No objection to the motion being moved without notice. No objection to the motion itself. Agreed to. Honourable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I hereby move without notice that the House commends Computer Centre South Africa and Mr. Paul Norris for their continued contribution to social development through the donation of computers to HS Reach for a Dream in Mitchells Plain and Philippi, and ensuring that the youth have access. Further note that these computers will serve as a tool to bring education and recreation together for the greater benefit of underprivileged communities and for the youth in particular. Abuso.
Is there an objection? There is an objection that will be printed on the order paper. Honourable Lekker.
Thank you, Speaker. DA Caucus, you may object in advance. I note that the House notes and welcomes the announcement that there will be no cuts to the number of police officers in the Western Cape, despite the DA going wild last year, confusing people about the so-called plans to reduce the police service in the Western Cape. I so move.
Any objection? There is an objection. Will be printed in the order paper. Are there any further? Honourable Dugmore.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes and welcomes the announcement by the Airports Company of South Africa that Cape Town International Airport will be renamed. Notes further that the renaming process was initiated after Transport Minister, Minister Bladen Zimandi, had directed AXA to facilitate the process, and commends the Minister for providing leadership in this regard and calls on communities to submit their proposals.
Any objection to the motion being moved without notice? No objection to the motion itself. Agreed to. Honourable Diana.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Motion without notice. I move that the House thanks the National Minister of Water and Sanitation, Ugugile Nkwinti, who intervened to save Saldanha and other West Coast towns from having taps run dry due to the empty Mersverstand Dam by facilitating the release of water from other dams like Berg River, and also for his assistance in the province of the Western Cape, where the DA failed to properly and efficiently manage this resource prudently, and furthermore notes that the average water usage in Cape Town still grows and exceeds the limit set to overcome the present drought spell. I so move.
Any objection to the motion? There is an objection. The motion will be printed on the order paper. Honourable Magaka.
That the House, Deputy Speaker, I move without notice that the House notes and condemn DA's conference for amending its constitution to remove its mayor in the city of Cape Town, Patricia Tilila, from office after she has helped it to get a two-thirds majority from 2016 local government election.
Order. I sense there's objections there that will be printed on the order paper. Are there any further? Honourable Jangchi.
This is a good motion to listen to.
Order. Order. Honourable Jangchi, you may proceed.
A very good motion to listen to. That the House notes the continued collapse in governance in Cape Town due to DA infighting, which resulted in the failure to spend more than 40% of its capital budget. Notes too that the city wants to increase tariff for water with almost 30%. Further welcomes the Cape Chamber of Commerce public condemnation of this due to what it termed the crisis in the city leadership, and condemns the DA's administration in the city for compromising service delivery to the people. I so move. Please object.
Are there any objections to the motion be moved? There is an objection. Order. Order. Motion will be printed on the order paper. Honourable Casella.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I hereby move without notice that the House notes with great concern media reports that Eskom is owed 13.5 million rands by municipalities on default payments throughout the country. All of these are ANC municipalities. Further note that none of the Western Cape municipalities owe any monies to Eskom, and wish to applaud and encourage them to continue on that trajectory and keep a clean bill of service to their creditors. I so move.
Order. Are there any? There's an order. There's an objection. It will be printed on the order paper. Are there any further? Honourable Nkosela.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. I hereby move without notice that the House condemns the disruption and chaotic management of water supply in Cape Town and the entire Western Cape by the former Minister of Water and Sanitation, Nomvula Mokonyane. Further note that the distinct style of leadership, competence and respect for intergovernmental relations by the new minister, Gugile Nkwinti, is encouraging that this parliament applauds this form of action and approach by Minister Nkwinti as progressive in embracing good governance and sustainable supply of water to all affected municipalities in the Western Cape. I so move.
Order. I sense there's an objection. That motion will be printed on the order paper. Are there any further? Honourable Olivier, are you wanting to move? No. Any further? Honourable Nkosela, are you done? If there's no further, that will then bring us to the end of the business for today. The House is adjourned.